How do you not see that she can't be around that dick again until he gets help? She loves her papa and grandma, and he lives with them. If I get full custody, they don't ever see her because that's his residence. Why haven't they kicked his ass out? How old is he? He asked. 35, I answered. Still living at home. My brother is fucking chief of cardiology at 35. I'm 2 years older than Derek, and I run a successful business after busting my ass to get there, and this piece of shit lives at home? His eyebrows rose while I stared at him, livid, pissed he was going off on me about Derek's bullshit as if I hadn't lived with it every single day for years. He fucking lives at home with a nice truck. Then he bullies your ass around like he did yesterday. Can't give two fucks about the way it traumatizes his daughter. It makes no sense to me. None. That last part was Jim and that CEO tone I'd heard him use when he started commanding shit. I was furious. And I didn't know exactly why. Was I angry at Jim for making it sound like I didn't have my daughter's well-being in mind? Or was I mad at myself because he had witnessed enough to draw that conclusion? You don't fucking understand, I said, trying to keep it together. He shook his head, and I could tell he was not happy with that answer. No, Avery, I don't fucking understand. I imagine that after yesterday, you would want nothing more than to ensure he never comes around you or that precious little girl again. I can't take... I get it, he said, getting up. One thing I despise is excuses. I am not programmed to accept them, I guess. Jesus Christ, I can't even handle them from my team members, let alone when it comes to the two people I care for most, and the one person who can do something about it, but she won't. This is my child and my life. I'm doing the best I can with it. I shot back angrily, following him away from where Addie was asleep. My defense mechanisms were in full swing. How dare he or anyone say anything to me about caring for my child? You don't know how much she loves Larry and Annette. Then her grandparents need to stop bringing that fuck up around the granddaughter who loves them so much, he said, hands in his pockets and staring past me. It's all fucked up, Avery. I know that. I know how hard this must be for you. Addicts like him mess everything up. I see where this dick is fucking over you and Addie, and I'm telling you, you are the only one who can end it. I crossed my arms. I'm doing everything I can, Jim. My voice cracked as I tried desperately to hold back my anger and my tears. I think I've been doing it well, too, since way before you came around. Addie and I are happy. Derek does this shit, and then it just goes away. Ave. His voice lowered with pity. You have to see through this bullshit somehow. If not for you and the two breakdowns I've witnessed that scumbag forced you into, then for your daughter. I need to know you're going to take the help I promised you in Palm Springs to get that fucker out of your life. He ran a hand through his hair when the door chime audibly alerted him on the outdoor intercom, and Jake's voice came through, announcing that he and Ash were here with more pool toys. The problem with what Jim expected of me was that I wasn't brave enough to use the lawyers he would hire to help me gain custody of my daughter. Jim didn't know the details of my dark history, my jail time, me being a user, and that being the reason why I ended up with Derek in the first place. How could I ever expect someone like Jim to understand?
Chapter 37. Jim. I might have overstepped my bounds in my conversation with Avery by the pool that morning, but I couldn't help it. I loved her and Addie too, and so this Derek asshole ignited a rage within me that was hard to explain. He brought out feelings inside me that only one other person had, my mother. Living with an addict was detrimental to my brother and me in so many ways, and the last thing I wanted was for Addie to have even a sliver of the childhood I'd experienced. The more I thought about Avery and Addie's situation, the more unanswered questions were brought to my mind. Would my mother have cheated on my dad if she weren't using drugs? Would she have given half a damn about her two little boys if she weren't a selfish addict? Would it have all been so different if she weren't so consumed with her self-destructive habits? It didn't matter now. I couldn't change the past, but I could help shift Avery and Addie's future. Avery and I sat at a quiet corner booth in a diner, not having said much since our disagreement from earlier. She and Ash had dropped off Addie at the church to practice singing for her Christmas program earlier in the afternoon, so Avery and I hadn't had a chance to finish our conversation. If I was honest, I wasn't sure what else to say, and from Avery's lack of engagement on the topic, I assumed she felt the same way. "Jim," Avery interrupted my thoughts. "Are you still with me?" "Sorry. There's a lot of shit on my mind," I answered truthfully. "Well, we have about 20 minutes before I have to leave to pick up Addie from her singing practice." She grabbed the check off the table and smiled at me. "This one is on me." No, you don't have to do that," I insisted as Avery stood up. "I know I don't. Be right back," she said with a wink as she walked up to the register. I placed my elbows on the table, folded my hands together, and watched her handle the transaction. She was such a strong, capable woman, and maybe that was why I couldn't fucking understand why she was cowering in this aspect of her life when it mattered the most. Why would she be so intimidated by such a small, insignificant, manipulative man? I had no control over Avery's decisions, and I definitely couldn't understand them, but I wasn't the type of person who was capable of backing down, especially when it came to something important to me. Avery was an attentive and doting mother, making her behavior when it came to this toxic man utterly baffling. Why not pluck the weed out from its root and be done with it? Why not set custody in stone and demand he gets help? Why all of the enabling? There was no excuse for his behavior, in my opinion. No amount of guilt or whatever the fuck Avery was dealing with would make me bring that child around that man if it were up to me. I don't give a shit if Addie's grandparents were Santa and Mrs. Claus. There's no fucking way I would want her in that environment with an unstable drug addict. I took one last drink of my iced tea and stood with a forced smile. I had to clear my head. I was on the brink of having to fly to London for work, and I didn't want to leave my girls like this. We walked to our cars, which were parked next to each other in the back of the gated parking lot. I leaned against mine, wishing we'd had more quality time together. I despised the tension between us. Avery studied me after I pulled on my sunglasses, and she crossed her arms. "You're pissed off at me, aren't you?" she questioned with a snarky grin. "Not pissed, gorgeous." I reached for her hand and pulled her to where I reclined against the passenger side of my car. I went to kiss her, but she covered my mouth before it reached her lips. She giggled, and it instantly lightened the mood. Maybe this potential of having to fly to London was partly to blame for my attitude. "Yes," she said as I kissed the palm of her soft hand. "You're pissed. You hardly said a word at dinner." "I'm sorry if my temperament made you uncomfortable. I never want to make you feel that way, no matter what is on my mind." She smiled, leaning against me, her arms stretched over each of my shoulders. "It's okay." I missed her perfume, her kiss, her ass, where my hands instantly went. I missed her so much and couldn't lose her. Fuck that miserable prick for being a thorn in my side, and me not being able to do a damn thing about it. I ran my hands up her back, feeling her warm skin through her light shirt. "I'm having a pretty hard time not throwing you into the back seat of your car and fucking you here and now," I teased, tickling her neck with my tongue and lips now. "That doesn't sound half bad to me." She ran her fingers through my hair. "But I can only imagine what it would look like if we got caught doing that." I smiled against her flash. "And with a car seat in the back, no less." I brought my face back to meet her brilliant blue eyes. "At least they wouldn't question we'd be needing another one in 9 months?" Avery shook her head. "You're impossible." I chewed on my bottom lip. "You've seen me on my phone and doing emails since this morning. It's because my London offices are trying to send me into an early grave, and now I'm dealing with something." "Spit it out," she said. "I know this coming weekend is supposed to be our weekend together, given you're having Addie stay with her grandparents, but I may have to fly to London on Friday. I'm trying to bust this shit out with every resource I have available, but I don't know if I'll be able to get out of this one so easily." She smiled. "I can survive a weekend without you." "I may be there through the entire week after," I said. "It all depends on the hotel chain we're working with. I'm certain if I don't meet face-to-face with the owner whining and dining and shit like that, we'll lose the damn deal." "Hey now." Will you be finding another wife to help you pass the time? She arched her eyebrow at me. I laughed. I'll be staying in the city, and the first chance I get, I'm flying home, I said. Avery's cell phone alarm went off. That's my timer. I had a feeling I'd get caught up with you and forget to pick my little Christmas angel up from practice. I stood and brought her in, holding her tightly against me. I love you. Well, if you can manage, she said. Meet me for lunch tomorrow. I'm stacked in, gorgeous, I said. Trust me, I'm doing everything I can to get out of flying to London. I know I gave you shit for being chained to work, but I do get it. I am still here, and Addie will still be here. Women have their men traveling for work all the time. Don't start slacking on your job just because you're dating some crazy hot chick with dazzling eyes, Mr. Mitchell. You have it all nailed down, don't you? I'm at peace with it. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if your elite sexy ass had to take your private jet to Dubai for some business conference too. She laughed, and then after a small kiss, she turned to get into her driver's seat. Despite the low points, I had a fantastic weekend, Jim. Thank you so much for everything. Addie loved it, and so did I. I love making my ladies happy, I said, relieved we ended our weekend on a high note. I waved her off after she blew me a kiss and then floored it in the open parking lot, most likely just to taunt me with the reminder of her lead foot. After a painstaking week of nonstop work, Thursday night was when I knew I had to fucking fly to London for sure. This deal had me by the balls in the worst way. It didn't matter that I'd busted my ass all week, missing out on so many opportunities to see Avery. This trip couldn't be avoided. Friday morning, I called Avery to give her the news. It was bad enough that I'd sacrificed so many lunches and dinners that we could have shared all week. Now that was all for nothing. I'm getting ready for work, she said. I'm guessing this is the call that we're not seeing each other this weekend? Yes. I'm so sorry. I tried everything, really, I said as I buckled into the leather captain's chair on the company's jet. Next weekend. Perhaps we can try out the beach thing again? You might need dry suits instead of wetsuits this time. It's going to be chilly next weekend, since we're heading into fall. Those are the best waves, I said with a smile. Yeah, Addie isn't going near those. What if Addie and I watched her badass mom enjoy them instead? Are you already at the airport? Damn, you're leaving early. You must have been up since 3 a.m. She laughed into the phone. Oh, hold up, that's Larry calling me, she said before clicking over. I watched the tarmac as the plane backed out. Alex sitting across from me finishing up whatever call he was on before we took off. I did not want to leave, but I knew I'd be more focused once we were in the air and Alex and I would start going through numbers and marketing pitches for the chain we were busting our asses to secure. Jim, she said in a softer voice when she resumed our call. Are you still there? Yeah, we're slowly backing out. Everything good? Listen. Her voice became stern. I'm never going to hide shit like this from you, but don't lose it when I tell you I've got this and can handle it, okay? I rubbed my forehead. Go on, I said, knowing this was about Derek and praying with all that I was that she was about to tell me she was keeping Addie this weekend if that fucker was out again. Derek's at the house. He's out. I'm fucking pissed about it too, but Larry and Annette said they'd be the first to call the cops on his ass if he so much as touches anything to get high around Addie. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced the rage into my balled-up fists. I won't even ask how he was released, I said as calmly as I could. You feel comfortable with Addison around him after he scared the fuck out of her last weekend? I'm leaving this up to Addie. If she doesn't want to go, then she stays with me. Jesus, Avery, she's a 3-year-old child, I said, beside myself that Avery was handling this situation in this way. It was as though the beach incident had never fucking happened. You have to make this decision for her, I pleaded. Avery, I know how to deal with my daughter and Derek, goddammit. Please don't do this again. Addie will tell me if she doesn't want to go. Okay, I said, my jaw so tight I felt a spasm in both cheeks. You have Jake and Ash's numbers, right? I'll even have Colin text his number to you. Slow down, she said. I don't need you trying to protect me from London. I'm sorry you've seen this dick bring me to my limits, and I'm sorry you've even had to meet him. But this isn't new for me. I'll be fine. You'll be fine, and so will Addison when he's out of your life. He's a loose cannon. How can you trust her around that asshole? Because I've dealt with this for 3 fucking years, Jim, she said. And yes, I have Jake and Ash's numbers. Ash invited me over this weekend. That'll be fun for you too, I said, completely at a loss for words. Did I need to shut up and find my place? Should I keep pressuring Avery, expecting a different result when she had so obviously made up her mind and didn't want to hear my point of view? What the fuck was I supposed to do? I was trying to give her my best advice from the eyes of someone who wasn't twisted up in this toxic situation, but she didn't want to hear it. Hey, I've got to go. The plane is on the runway. I'll try to call when we land. Okay, be safe. We both love you. Jesus, stabbed me in my fucking tortured heart. And you, I managed. And after ending the call, I threw my cell against the leather sofa across from me like a pissed-off teenager. My God, Alex said. You've been in dick mode all week, and now the cell phone is on the receiving end of your bullshit? What the hell is going on with you? That piece of shit is out of jail and Avery's still going to take Addison to his parents' place tonight. I leaned back, the G-forces of the plane pinning me into my seat. Are you joking? Alex said. She needs to bury that little bastard with your lawyers. Do you think she might be bothered by you hiring the lawyers, not her? No. I shook my head and stared at him with an expression that probably looked as pathetic as I felt. She's fucking scared of him. That fucker has her right where he wants her, and she doesn't see it. Damn, Alex said. How is it that the addicts managed to take down everyone with them? A question for the interventionist that I'm confident the family will never ask for. How can no one see that this fuck-up is either going to end up dead or taking them all down with him? I ticked each of my fingers against my thumb one by one, staring out the window at the clouds we were climbing into. I don't fucking know where my place is in all of this. All you can do is support her. Hang in there, no matter how shitty it gets. She'll eventually see it, but you have to let it play out. I know it's hard, standing by while a child is involved, but you know how messy families can be. It's never black and white. I worry for that little girl more than I have a right to, I guess. Avery's a mom. They have better intuitions than guys. He smiled. She's also tough as fucking nails. I fear for that dickhead if he fucks with that little girl and scares her again. She is leaving it up to the 3-year-old to decide whether or not she wants to be around her dad. Avery isn't stupid. I know you're frustrated by her decision-making, but it is indeed her decision to make. Children's instincts are good too, you know. If Addie doesn't want to see that fuckhead, then you have nothing to worry about. He smiled and reclined in his chair. Speaking of children's instincts, my God, you'd think she was yours and Avery's daughter, not the other dude's. I stood while the plane started to level out. I'm getting a bourbon before we open these computers. What are you having? I'm determined to drink all of the special scotch Jakey boy had stocked on the plane before he flies again. That is a trip I do not wish to be a part of. I laughed. I knew I should stay in my lane and let Avery handle the Derek situation the best she knew how, but I had so many feelings about everything, and none of them were good. I could only hope I stayed busy enough in London not to drive myself crazy. Chapter 38. Jim. The week in London was nothing compared to the 3 weeks that followed it. Avery and I had stayed in better contact than the week before I left for the UK. However, we were in this stalled-out zone, one could say, with her ex. He hadn't been off the rails entirely since that day at the beach, but I wasn't a fool to think he was clean and sober. People with addictions, like his, didn't walk away from daily use without rehab. No fucking way. Was I still irritated that Avery wasn't pursuing his ass in courts? Fuck yes. It was making me miserable seeing her acting like someone who was backed into a corner. What was bothering me most was the feeling that this dirtbag was a heartbeat away from another bender, It was only a matter of time. Avery and I had a friction point in our relationship because of him, and it was driving me insane that we couldn't see eye to eye on this issue. She seemed closed off to hearing my advice, and I was not going to lose her over this asshole, so I was pushing it all down. The 2 weeks I'd spent with Addie and Avery since Derek's beach blowout episode were the highlights to the past month. I was officially in over my head with stories of Sally and the 3 little rascals, and Addie wasn't letting these made-up characters leave anytime soon. Avery gave me the okay to renovate one of my rooms for Addie to use when they stayed the night, so the previous Saturday we had a shopping experience, to say the least. Since Avery and Ash had become a lot closer in the last month, Clay and Joe even came along, making it an all-hands-on-deck situation. Addie was as adorable as ever, gripping my hand as she put the master of design Clay in his place while picking out her favorite color for everything: purple. I laughed as I looked around and realized that all of these grown adults had bent over backward, doing whatever this little girl wanted, and she ate it up that whole day. Now here we were, dropping off Addie with her grandparents for the weekend again. I'd been dreading this all week long. Avery had asked me earlier in the week if I would like to come along to meet Larry and Annette, in the hopes that it might ease my mind about Addie staying here. I appreciated Avery's gesture, knowing her heart was in the right place, and I hoped I could make some kind of sense out of Avery's rationale after meeting them. "Hey, daydreamer, are you coming?" Avery asked, letting Addie out of her car seat in the back of my 2-door Bentley while I sat in the driver's seat, zoned out. "Just thinking about tonight, Ave," I said, getting out of the car, peeling off my suit jacket and draping it over my seat. Avery's hand grabbed mine as Larry led us into the house, and we walked into the quaint but nicely arranged living room. Larry closed the door and followed us in, greeting me and shaking my hand. "I'm Larry," he said. "It's nice to finally meet the man who Papa's little peep talks about all the time." He chuckled. "She's the best," I managed, studying the casually dressed man. His clean goatee and graying hair made him look well put together and made me question why in the fucking world he hadn't kicked his adult addict kid out of the house yet. "It's nice to meet you. I'm Jim." "Have a seat," Larry said. I sat on the other end of the sofa from Larry, noticing his television was turned to some boxing documentary. "Hey there," a woman said as she popped her head into the room from around the corner. She smiled, but it was painfully evident that she was worn down. She was either overworked or just fucking done with life. "I'm Annie." I heard Addison and Avery in the back of the small house, Avery seemingly getting Addison in the bath. "Avery, I can give her a bath," Anne said, walking down a hall that was lined with family pictures from across the decades. "Don't worry about it," I heard Avery say. "Go back to baking whatever you're spoiling Addie with tonight." "You ever see this guy fight before?" Larry asked, pointing at his television after tossing some peanuts into his mouth and casually leaning back on the sofa. I crossed my ankle over my knee and loosened my stiff position. "No," I said, studying the black and white highlight reel of 2 boxers. "That's Sugar Ray Robinson," he said with a knowing laugh. "He's a bit before my time, I guess," I answered. Boxing had never been a sport I'd regularly watched, so I had nothing to contribute to this conversation. "Do you realize this guy fought over 215 times?" he asked with a laugh, "with only 2 losses and 1 draw. "Holy cow," I said, refraining from cursing. "Are you kidding me?" I was no expert, but that sounded like a hell of a record. "When this guy turned pro in 1940, he was 85-0 with 69 knockouts. "Dang, man," I said. "He was only 19 years old." Larry laughed again, casually having more peanuts. "This guy knocked out more people before he was 19 years old than most fighters in their whole career." "That's pretty incredible. What was his professional record?" He looked at me and his forehead creased in humor. 128, 1-2, he prattled off. "The guy actually retired in 2 weight classes, then came out of retirement and took another damn title," he said with a laugh. I was settling in some with the man and understanding why Addie enjoyed his company. He was more likable than I'd imagined. I could see why Addie's relationship with her grandparents was so crucial to Avery, especially since she didn't have much in the way of a family of her own. Unfortunately, it didn't take long before I saw a shadow making its way down the hall. Derek stopped into the living room, gave me a nod, and took the recliner situated next to his dad. "Best fighter right there," Derek said, reclining and eyeing the television. "What's up, Jim?" he asked. "Nice suit. I've got some expensive ones like that, too." Larry was silent as he looked over at Derek. "You just now waking up?" he asked. "What time you get in last night, bud?" Fucking bud, I thought, growing more irritated every second, seeing this idiot wearing his hoodie and sagging jeans. "Late, but I was at Rick's place." "Rick?" Larry asked. "Is that the guy who owns that dealership?" Derek eyed me, smiled, then looked at his dad. "Yep," he said. "They got some badass trucks that came in this week." "No kidding," Larry said dismissively. Unlike Derek's father, I wasn't dismissing shit at this point. The fucker had been out all goddamn night and was just now waking up. Rick my ass. Derek's bullshit may have manipulated this family, but where he'd lost Larry's attention, he'd gained mine. "Yeah, they're pretty legit, like the truck I got." "What's the name of the dealership?" I questioned, knowing my company had acquired a few in Anaheim years ago, seeing their potential in this location. "Rendell's," Derek said, our eyes locking. "Why?" he asked, settling into his chair like the dick he was. "You interested in trading in your $1 million Aston Martin for a nice truck?" "I don't think so," I answered. "Rick Rendell. I've met that man," I said as Larry looked back and forth between Derek and me as the tension in the room grew. "Old man Rendell, you mean?" Derek asked. "No, we acquired that dealership and another few years back. Interesting that you know Rick," I said. What I wanted to say was that I knew Rick had a family, and the multiple times we'd met over dinners, this man never once struck me as the type to hang out with the piece of shit that was now trying to stare my ass down. "Well, that's my boy," Derek said. "Nice," I responded. And then Avery walked out with Addison running to her papa first and then me, not to the prick who started to argue with Avery about what time we got there even though he was asleep when we did. "You ready to have fun with your papa this weekend?" I asked Daddy. "Lots of fun." "Get over here and come say hi to your daddy," Derek said, leaning forward in his recliner. "Hey, Dad," Addie said, then looked at me. "Bye, Jim." I watched how the once calm atmosphere of the room became more and more toxic after Derek had entered it. Avery was going over last-minute details about picking Addie up on Sunday while Addison walked to her papa, who focused on her stuffed pup and a book she brought with her. I stood, knowing we were about to leave, and once farewells were given, Avery and I walked out, leaving Addie in the care of her grandpa. Her dad, however, apparently couldn't give a shit about his daughter being there since he felt the urge to follow Avery and me out to my car. "What are you doing, Derek? Go back inside," Avery ordered him while I pointedly ignored him. "You know my boy, eh?" Derek said, lighting a cigarette. "I know enough," I answered, opening Avery's door for her and making sure Derek didn't feel inclined to charge the car and start ordering her around again. "Enough? What the fuck does that mean?" he asked, taking a drag from his cigarette. "You trying to make my dad question me about being out all night?" "I was just wondering if you were talking about the same person who owned the business I acquired a few years back," I said, walking toward my side of the car. "You don't know dick." This motherfucker had no idea how thin the thread was that was keeping me together. "If that's what you want to assume, then I'll allow that," I said, holding back. "Oh, you'll allow it," he mocked. "Just let him go, Jim," Avery snapped. I sat in the car, disturbed that this unstable motherfucker was going back into that house with Addie, pissed off that I was leaving with Avery. Fuck this whole situation. I fired up the car and looked at her while Derek wandered around the back of the house. "That jerk-off is too angry for us to leave Addie here, Avery," I said in a low voice. "Jim, drive the damn car. If you haven't caught on to the fact that he hates you yet, I don't know what will help you figure out why he's pissed." I clamped my mouth shut and drove the fuck out of there. You haven't spoken since we left Larry and Annette's, Avery said a few blocks from my house. Sorry. I'm just struggling with all of this, Avery, I finally said as I pulled in. She nodded as she unbuckled and we both entered the house, kicking off our shoes by the front door. And I threw my suit coat over the back of a chair while she set her bag down. After I'd poured myself a bourbon and Avery had poured herself a glass of wine, we sat on my sofa. Jim, she ran her hand over the vest I still wore. Tonight was weird. I'm sorry about that. Don't be sorry, Ave, I said, kissing her head. Jesus, I don't know what to ask you to be at this point. She sat up. What does that mean? Larry, I said, looking at her sharp eyes, feeling her defense mechanisms coming up around her. He's a nice man, although when Derek came out, after just fucking waking up from his long night out, he only mildly questioned him and then ignored it. It was almost like he didn't want to start shit with him. No one wants to engage Derek's bullshit, Avery said. It's not right, Avery, I said, leaning my elbows on my knees, holding my glass of bourbon with both hands. How can any of you not see this? I looked back at her. I know you're not afraid of that little shit, so why, fucking tell me, here and now, why won't you protect your daughter from him? Fucking hell, Jim, she sighed. You knew this was the bullshit side of my life when you signed up for it, and now, fuck, you're trying to help you, I interrupted. How is it that I'm the bad guy in this situation? I never said that, did I? You're defending this dirtbag by not allowing me to help you. You get so fucking angry every time I ask why you won't fight for custody of Addie. How is it that I'm not okay with leaving her anywhere near that house with that fucker and you are? Because I know Larry and Annette, Avery said. I know they won't let my daughter get hurt no matter how badly Derek behaves. Behaves? That's the fucking word for what he does now? Wrong choice of words. Jesus Christ, she said and rubbed her forehead. I can't do this. She stood up. I can't fucking do this with you, Jim. Damn it. I stood and brought her into my arms and then lifted her chin, bringing her eyes to meet mine. I don't want to do this either. I want to help, but I have no idea where my place is in any of this anymore. I don't need you trying to step in and control this. This is how it's been for a long time. Larry loves Addie as much as you, Jim. She's the light in the darkness that Derek puts him and Annette through. You have to know he won't let anything happen to her. I know this because I know them. I couldn't pretend to understand why Avery was so sure about Derek's parents. It all seemed so dysfunctional. I sighed and pulled her in and held her tightly. I hate this, I said. It brings up shitty memories of my mom's addiction and Jake and me being left with that woman. Maybe I feel that is what's happening to Addison when we drop her off anywhere around that prick. Avery's tense muscles loosened, and she returned my hug. I'm sorry you have to deal with any of this. Stop fucking apologizing, I said. You have to stop apologizing for something you can fix. I know, she conceded. The rest of our night was not what I'd imagined it would be. It seemed that we'd been heading this direction since the beach incident. I couldn't fix anything or help anyone. I had no say in this, and every time I opened my mouth, all I did was push Avery away. For the first time in my life, I was fucking stumped. The weekend ironed itself out in its own way. Avery seemed always to wake up happier and healthier than the day before. I opted to shut my fucking mouth about the whole thing so we could enjoy each other before heading back to work and having to squeeze in time together during the work week. We enjoyed a full day on Sunday, Clay coming over and putting the final touches on the transformed room that I couldn't wait for Addie to see. Now it was Monday again, and time for another hectic week. Hey, Alex said, nodding back at Summer dismissively. Everything okay? I asked, eyeing the papers Alex held. Alex pinched his lips and looked past me and out my windows as he sat across from my desk. Alex, I said, did you and Summer finally call it quits? What the hell is his problem? Alex rubbed his forehead, then cleared his throat. This was my responsibility and I was going to handle it. Am I firing you today? I smirked. Funny, he said. Jim, save the drama and suspense, dude. What the fuck is wrong with you? Here are the reports from the investigation that's been ongoing since that lady in the preschool gave Avery and Addie shit, he said, holding a stack of papers. I've been getting reports for the last month when they started in on investigations in all departments. What are those papers? The ones we have to terminate immediately. They never passed background checks, but they were hired anyway. The investigators were looking into it and they pointed out that we need to tighten up the system we're using or use a new process. We have to fire around 18 people today because of this fucking mistake, he said. Being that it was our mistake in one way or another, we misled these employees. We'll send them with a severance package, I said. I don't want the reputation for throwing people out on the street. That's not the issue. Okay, so what then? Fuck, he didn't look well. Avery. Your Avery was one of them. What? Why? Because of something stupid? Maybe we ought to look into these cases then. I don't want people fired over nonsense. Alex leaned forward and slid the papers that he'd been holding across my desk. I felt the blood leave my face when I read Avery's report. All this time, I'd been made to feel like the bad guy. Maybe I was willfully blind. All I knew was that the reality of the situation was something I wasn't prepared to see.
Chapter 39. Avery. I had just finished my lunch and sat at my desk when Stephanie walked up with her usual solemn, Avery, fucked up look. I swiveled in my chair to face her, just about to hit send on a text to Jim, saying that I'd missed him at lunch today. I'd actually thought for a second that he was going to show up, since this was the first time he hadn't sent out a buffet of food for me to enjoy in his absence. The poor man was probably hung up with something, and I couldn't blame him at all for getting distracted. "Mr. Mitchell has requested that you meet with him in his office," she said. "I believe you know your way to the executive elevators?" I eyed Alyssa's smile and refrained from the one I was about to display. "Yes," I answered. "I'll be back soon." "Get it, girl?" Amir whispered, Jim being the constant topic of conversation between all three of us at lunch. I never blamed them for their curiosity. I'd want to know more about the elusive man who ran the company if I were lunch pals with his girlfriend, too. I rode the elevator to the top floors. The elevator that reminded me of Jim and me nearly going for it, and I got an exciting swirl in my stomach, knowing I was going to see him. Who the hell knew what he was up to, but I wasn't going to complain. Maybe this was a new effort to see each other during the work week. Perhaps he was going to make good on his funny little promises of wanting to fuck me in his office after he uninstalled the cameras in them. "I'm here for Mr. Mitchell," I said to Summer, Jim's secretary and Alex's girl. She was intently typing before she looked up at me and then stood. "Follow me," she said. I trailed her into Jim's office as she announced me, and then she quickly rushed past me again, closing the door behind her. I almost said a joke about her leaving like something was on fire, but as soon as I locked eyes with Jim, sitting behind his imposing desk, his icy glare sent a shiver of fear down my spine. "Jim?" I questioned. "Avery," he answered, his voice low and emotionless. "What's going on?" I asked. "Since the debacle of the preschool situation, I had the company perform background investigations on all departments," he started. "Oh no, not this. Oh my God." My heart was pounding so hard that I was surprised I could still hear him speaking. "The reports of those employees who did not pass the background checks made it to my desk today," he finished. I felt my stomach drop. I'd never thought that I had anything to hide from this man, and never did so intentionally per se. But the shame that flooded through me at what I knew he'd seen was paralyzing me. "I suppose I'm here because of that?" "Yes," Jim said coldly. "Among learning why you're not eligible to work at this company," he sat back in his chair, "I've also discovered why I've looked like the asshole in our relationship for this entire last month." "What the fuck does that mean?" I snapped back. "It means that after discovering the reasons you failed background, I also found out that you've withheld pretty serious information from me. Information that leads me to believe these are the reasons you are so defensive of your ex and completely argumentative when I've asked you on numerous occasions to open up and explain why you feared taking him to court." He cocked his head to the side. "I guess I was the fool in this relationship this whole time." "You—" I paused, my defenses shooting up around me and my heart pounding with rage at his accusatory demeanor. "Jim, you were never the fool." I tried not to shout. "This shit is in my past. I should have—" "Past or not, Avery, you brought it to the present, and you keep it with you. You won't fight for your daughter because of this?" He glanced down at the paper that I knew revealed my messed up past to him. The felony DUIs, possession of controlled substances, and God knew what else between all of the charges that had actually stuck and the ones that had been thrown out or expunged over the years. It was all the horrible shit that stained my life, and that I had moved on from years ago, and it was sitting on his desk. "You made me out to be the sucker in all of this, knowing these were the reasons you won't protect your daughter from that man. You listened to me go on and on about my mother for months, and you never said a word." "I have my own reasons for that. It was never your place to tell me how to take care of my daughter in the first place." "I won't listen to you standing there and trying to spin this into being my fault. You have proven that you have no respect for me whatsoever, despite everything I've done to be there for you. I don't know how many times I asked you why you cowered to that son of a bitch, and you never trusted me enough to tell me the whole truth about your past. Complete fucking addict behavior, hiding everything from people who care about you." "Fuck you! Don't you dare try to use the mistakes I've made against me," I barked, his dark expressions not shaking me. "And you demand my respect? You're not my fucking husband. You are my boyfriend." "It doesn't matter, does it? Not anymore, anyway. I can't trust someone who is willing to lie by omission straight to my face multiple times. Even when I opened up to you, stating I would never lose you and would fight for you, you knew the entire time that you had no intention of ever doing anything. And you didn't say a word. I've been driving myself crazy for over a fucking month, walking on eggshells around you, holding back everything I had to say so as not to upset you or interfere with your parenting decisions. Little did I know why you were making such horrible, codependent, and enabling ones. You're so fucking willing to hide in your secrets that you put your daughter through this? It's fucking sick, Avery." "Walking on eggshells? Fucking please. I won't listen to this shit from you. You were born with a silver fucking spoon in your mouth. You don't understand what it's like to have nothing and no one and still, somehow, manage to straighten yourself out, pick up the pieces and keep going." "I understand enough to know you'll never do the right thing for your daughter," he said in a voice so lethal that if I were standing next to him, I would have slapped him across the face. "I'm going to pack up my shit and be out of your company and out of your life. I'll leave the keys to your goddamn charity car at my desk." "The car is yours," he said. "I don't want the thing." "I'm sorry you feel this way about everything, but I couldn't tell you. I wasn't ready." I managed. As much as the defensive part of me felt that I didn't owe him any explanations, something inside me knew this was all wrong. "You would never be ready. If you couldn't be ready for your daughter, what makes me think there would have ever come a day that you trusted me enough to tell me the truth, to tell me everything? Instead, you allowed me to beg and argue with you about it constantly. It's not in my character to take a step back, but I did so because I loved you, and look at how that gets reciprocated. It's been a lie since the beginning, in my opinion. I will not be with someone who hides things from me, especially when they should have known I was there to help." His words searing through me, and I was so fucking angry I could have thrown the chair across the room as he spoke. Inside, I felt like there was a demon, hearing a priest speaking Latin in an exorcism. Jim was right to be so angry with me, but my fucking defense mechanisms wouldn't allow me to back down. I should have spoken up and told him that things weren't as they seemed, and I didn't consciously do anything deceptive, or that I loved him more than I'd ever loved anyone, and I would do whatever it took to earn his trust back. But I couldn't say it. I couldn't say anything that would have been redemptive. The demon inside me didn't want to, and the part of me that loved him didn't feel like I deserved it. What did I care anyway? This wouldn't be the first time someone abandoned me when shit got hard. Stand in line with your disappointment, Mr. fucking Mitchell. Well, I didn't need your help, I said. I don't need anyone's fucking help to raise my daughter. I've done it this long without you. Do what you need to do, he said. His tone was dismissive, his posture stiff, and it was evident that I was his worst enemy. That was written all over his face. Is that your paper or mine? I asked, ready to walk out of this place and Jim's life without batting an eye. The copy is yours if you want it. I don't care to ever look at it again. Do what you will with your life. You have it all figured out, right? Goodbye, I said, spinning around and walking out the door, feeling absolutely nothing. Total numbness. There was nothing left to say. This ended the way everything else in my life did. Horribly. The real fool in this situation was me, because for a while now I'd believed this life was something real. What an idiot I'd been to think anyone on the outside could understand my life. Chapter 40. Avery. It had been a month since I'd heard from or seen Jim. Luckily, I managed to find a decent-paying job as a receptionist at a dentist office in Anaheim, and since I'd opted for a month-to-month contract with the apartment I'd rented near Jim's office, it wasn't a problem to move out and rent a new place, a much smaller studio apartment, not too far from my new job. Addie wasn't thrilled about leaving her preschool or moving away from Jim, but she adjusted quickly and was excited to be able to see her papa more often. Larry and Annette were both retired, so it was convenient for them to watch Addie on the 3 days a week that she didn't attend her preschool. Many times, Addie had questioned not seeing Jim after we moved. Being a 3-year-old, I didn't want to saddle her with the details, so I explained that since we moved, Jim lived too far away, and that was why we didn't get to see him. Luckily, her papa was there, as he always was when my life seemed to crumble, so he filled the gap, thank God. Even though I cut off all contact with Jim, I was still in regular contact with Ash. We chatted about how her pregnancy was going and how busy her gallery had been lately, and we had the inevitable conversation about Jim and me. Ash wasn't judgmental of any aspect of my situation, from my past issues all the way up to Derek. I told her what Brittany had said to me after the breakup, and what seemed to be 100% accurate. Jim or no Jim, I needed to deal with my Derek issues. The way I saw it was the way it always had been. Derek was the root of every problem in my life or any other life that he touched with his addict bullshit. I was made out to be the bad guy in Jim's eyes because of that piece of shit. Larry and Annette had been turned into horrible enablers because of their son's manipulative personality. It was fucked up all the way around, and the source of all the chaos was always fucking Derek. Ash listened to everything I had to say, and she convinced me to go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting to hear stories from people who'd lived through similar situations and managed to get sober. I knew that a lot of my defensiveness came from a place of knowing I wasn't able to share my experiences with anyone who could relate. Perhaps this might change that. All I knew was that it couldn't hurt to see. I pulled my hair into a ponytail and fastened my hoop earrings before I headed down the outdoor steps of my apartment to where Ash waited for me in her car. I walked by my Aston Martin and couldn't help but laugh at how fucking stupid it looked there, entirely out of place. It was a stark reminder of the image of mine and Jim's relationship. What a fucking joke. Hey, Ash, I said, sliding into the passenger seat of a brand new Mercedes, happier to see her glowing and pregnant self than I thought I'd be. Hey, you. It feels like it's been forever, right? She chirped. You hungry? She grinned, remembering how well I loved food more than anything. I already stuffed myself before I got ready. Didn't want to risk there not being any snacks. I laughed. Look at you. It's almost baby time, huh? I should probably say how glorious it is to be pregnant, but I am ready to have this little man out of me. I feel you on that, I said as we left the apartment complex and headed toward the freeway. You should have let me drive. Jesus, I'm sorry I didn't think of how uncomfortable this stage of pregnancy is. She arched an eyebrow at me. Hence the reason Jake insisted on buying me this car. I swear I don't adjust to such expensive things very easily. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate it wholeheartedly, but good grief with that man sometimes. I laughed. So, have you two picked out a name yet? We're still officially undecided, she shrugged. Although I think we are going to go with John. She looked over her shoulder and accelerated onto the freeway to merge into the second lane. That was Colin's dad's name. He passed away not too long ago, and he was like a father to Jacob and Jim. He was there for both of the guys when they lost Howard. She smiled at me. In case you somehow manage to run into Colin, don't tell him. Jake wants to surprise him and Jim. He can be such a big goofball sometimes. I don't think I'll be running into Colin anytime soon, so don't worry. That's such a sweet thing to do, naming your son after him, I said, and then I took notice of how slow we were driving. I thought this place was about 20 minutes away, I said, wondering why the hell we were driving so slowly. Are you getting off somewhere? Oh my God, not you two, Ash said with a laugh. Jake despises how slowly I drive on the freeway. I think I'm perfectly safe, don't you? I chewed on my lip. Well, I know I drive a little too fast, so maybe I'm not the one to judge you. But if we have a ways to go on the freeway... I scanned around, looking over my shoulder and at her. Her hands were at 10 and 2, and she cracked me up with how she looked driving. It was like this was her first time out, and I was the driving instructor who was going to determine whether or not she was getting her license. We're fine here. Next time I am driving, I teased. So your stepmom, Carmen, suggested this meeting? How do you think it's going to go down? I'm feeling kind of nervous. Carmen told me that one of her nursing friends started going to AA after getting out of a relationship with an addict. She had major codependency issues and some addictive behaviors of her own, so she ended up at a meeting because she didn't have anyone else to talk to who could understand what she was going through. After seeing the bullshit Derek pulled on you at the beach and then hearing your story, I couldn't help but think of this. Well, I'm glad you suggested it, because I don't think I would have ever thought about it. Let's see what it's about, she said encouragingly. You never know when wisdom is going to decide to smack you upside the head. Ash couldn't have steered me in a better direction with the suggestion of AA, and she and I started to come to these meetings every Friday night. I felt terrible that she was continuing to drive all the way here to do this with me, but Addie got to see her on a few occasions, and my little girl loved that. Coming to these meetings was oddly comforting to me. It made me feel a lot less alone in the world. People had it so much worse than me, more than I would have never imagined. And I was reminded of that tonight when Sharon spoke. I felt my stomach drop like I was on a roller coaster and tears well up in my eyes. She was speaking directly to my hardened heart and soul with her realization that even though she'd stopped using, she was still sick. Sick because of the addict. Sick because she was always making excuses to enable her husband and not leave. Her codependency and enabling resulted in her children becoming addicts also, something that she'd thought she worked so hard to prevent. Her entire life had been one long, miserable fight. I was in tears when she finished speaking, realizing that I was sick like she was. I'd stopped abusing drugs many years ago, but I never stopped hiding and making excuses. I didn't see it before, but my choices made me as much of an enabler to Derek as his parents were. You doing okay, Ave? Ash asked as we got into her car. She could see I'd been crying since we listened to Sharon's story, and I could only imagine what was going through her head. I smiled through my tears. I think I had a breakthrough, I said with a certain amount of surprise in my voice. It's only the beginning, I know, but I get it now. At least I think I do. Sharon's story was heartbreaking, she said, rubbing my arm. May I ask what part of her story got through to you? I saw your entire demeanor change when she was speaking. Week after week, I've listened to these people share their stories. My whole life, I felt like I was dealt the shittiest hand possible, and since we've been coming here, part of me feels like I've softened up a bit, knowing that there's always someone who has it worse. I tried to organize my thoughts as they flooded into my mind. It was like a dam of information had burst. Don't get me wrong, I take no pleasure in hearing the horrible things these people have had to endure. You don't even need to say that. I know you don't, Ash said. It's just that, well, I've been using the pain of my past as a barrier, I think. I know that sounds strange. I shook my head, thinking that I probably sounded like a rambling idiot. It's not easy for me to admit this, but I think that I've probably spent my entire life being the victim. God, I fucking hate that word. Victim. If I'm honest about it, I've used that word as a justification for me not to share my life with people. It's the dark cloud that follows me everywhere, but it's there because I let it be there. I rested my head against the headrest. I lost Jim because of it. I was too fucking stubborn to open up all the way. I hid my dirty, dark secrets, allowing Derek to get away with whatever he wanted. My enabling cost me the most important relationship I've ever had. I started sobbing, and Ash leaned over and rubbed my back as I cried into my hands, the gravity of my actions slamming down onto me like a ton of bricks. It wasn't just about Jim. It was about my entire life. I'd always blamed my upbringing and young adult life for being the reason why my life always seemed to turn out wrong, not realizing that I was feeding it. I'd been self-sabotaging for as long as I could remember, and now it felt like everything was coming into focus so suddenly that it made my head spin. I finally took a deep breath and sat back in my seat. I need to eat or something. Ash laughed as she pointed at a Denny's across the street. Breakfast for dinner is always a good idea. After filling myself up on pancakes and sausage, we sat at our table, and I fidgeted with my coffee cup quietly. You know, when Sharon was talking, my heart broke for why she finally gave up, hoping it would make up for the past of everything that went bad. I know, I said, curious as to what had struck a chord with Ash. After my dad had his heart attack, I did a pretty quick downward spiral. I was an absolute mess, thinking about losing him after I'd lost my mother. Jake tried to help in the beginning, but I instantly snapped at him and pushed him away. I was so frightened of losing everyone that I subconsciously tried to push them away. It sounds so ridiculous, right? She took a sip of her milkshake and shrugged her shoulders. My point is that we are all such complex individuals, and I think there is so much going on under the surface, driving us to do things without us realizing it. The fact that you can see where you've used the victim role as a crutch, knowingly or not, is crucial because now you can try to control it instead of letting it control you. It's all about choices and taking back your power. You drive your life. Your life doesn't drive you. I grinned. I like that. Taking back my power. I feel like a weight has been lifted. When Sharon said it was forgiveness that helped her take her life back, that the things that happened to her weren't her fault, that really hit home. Ash reached across the table for my hand. Avery, have you felt that what happened to you since you were a little girl was your fault? My mom overdosing and screwing men? I mean, why would you do that if you loved your child and wanted them around? My grandma killed herself after I moved in. Was it because I reminded her of her daughter? Or was it just the burden of having to take care of me? Either way, she killed herself all the same. And then, of course, there were all the foster parents. We were burdens to them, and they never let us forget it in more ways than one. They just wanted the money. I rubbed my hand over the back of my neck as I spoke, knowing that talking about it would only help me find a place for my feelings. No one ever told me any of those things weren't my fault, so I guess it never occurred to me that maybe they weren't. By the time I stopped running away and found a good family who cared about me, I was too far down the rabbit hole for any of it to mean anything to me. I placed my elbows on the table and gripped my forehead. I guess the weight of that made me feel kind of worthless. Maybe it's easy to keep making fucked up choices when your self-worth is non-existent. That's why I ended up hooking up with Derek against everyone's advice. After getting pregnant and all that, I just felt like I'd made my bed and now it was time to lie in it. I realize now that couldn't have been farther from reality. It seems so clear to me at this moment. Ash and I just stared at each other and laughed with my newfound realization. I knew I had a very long road ahead of me, but at least I understood now. "What are you going to do now?" she asked, stealing the thought from my head. "Derek is the most toxic thing in my life," I answered her as I sank back against the booth. "In Addison's life. I have to get him out of it, just like Jim was saying all along. I shook my head, loving that man for trying so hard and wishing I had been smart enough to listen to him. I have to find a way to sell my car, I said. I have no idea where to start, but I'm going for it. I've had an irrational fear, planted by Derek, that the court system would take Addison from me if I ever went after him. He says I'm no better than he is in the court's eyes, but I don't believe that. I can't believe that if for no other reason than the fact that my record is old and his is fresh and still racking up charges regularly. You have no reason to be afraid that she'll be taken from you. None. I can't believe he made you think you were no better than he is after everything he's done, she said sympathetically. I wish I'd picked up on this earlier. I wouldn't have listened, I answered her truthfully. It's why I walked out on Jim and never looked back. He tried helping. I shut him out for it. Out of curiosity, why are you selling the car? That car has to be worth a lot of money, I said. I can get a retainer on a lawyer and another regular car to get Addie and me around. In his own way, I smiled, hoping one day Jim would know that he did help me. Jim helped pay for the lawyers. You're going for it then? She smiled. My sponsor, Javier, told me about lawyers who help people in my position. Call Javier tonight then, and if there's anything Jake and I can do to support you or help you in any way, you know we'll be there. Would you mind asking Jake if he knows anyone who can help me sell a luxury vehicle? I'd really appreciate that help. She smiled. Done. And if you can't find another, trust me, Jake's as much a car enthusiast as Jim is. We have a Range Rover that we never drive. Why don't we trade the cars out? Jake will sell yours for you, and you can use ours until you find something else. She eyed me. You're going hard and fast. You need to be sure you're ready for this. I know what I need the most, and that's to get that addict away from my daughter. If he doesn't want help, he can destroy his life, not hers. Let's get out of here, Ash said with a smile, grabbing the ticket. Dinner's on me, sweetie. The next month went by slowly and roughly, but it was steady. By the time I got the money to retain a lawyer and begin the custody battle for Addie, Derek had rolled his truck in the canyons and was in critical condition for over a week. I never went to see him in the hospital. I only got reports from Larry and Annette. I was still throwing everything I had into getting custody of Addie, and I was determined to win this case no matter what. The week after Derek was released, I went over to his house to talk to him about custody, but I didn't want to go alone, so I asked Javier to go with me, needing the support from my sponsor, and he was more than happy to come along. Addie played in the backyard with her papa while I got real with Derek. You won't see her again until the court custody battle is over, I said. I'm done having her around someone who is constantly putting her safety in danger, Derek. That will never happen again. No, I get it, he said. You need help, Derek, Javier said gently. There's a program, but you have to be willing to commit yourself and leave it all behind. Leave it all behind? Derek laughed. What does that mean? I'm clean now. A brush with death will sober you up, but you have way too many triggers and enablers here. Look at me giving addiction advice. Who would have seen that one coming? You'll learn more if you really want to get sober. You have to do it for you, though, not for anyone else. What about us? The family you and I started. We lost that a long time ago, I said. You have to remove that idea from your mind. We can never be a family, Derek, I said firmly. I'm not in love with you. I never really was. Your feelings for me aren't love either. They're codependent. You have to make this decision for yourself, but I will get custody of our daughter no matter what. Never in my life would I have imagined Derek agreeing to this, but I think he'd hit his bottom, and he knew that he couldn't continue in this way. He gave me full legal and physical custody of Addie, and he agreed to pack up his things and head to a 90-day recovery program in Florida. I was finally free of all the chaos that I'd helped create in my life. I would continue my healing and keep taking things day by day, but my black cloud had dissipated, and I was determined to let the sun keep shining down on me.
Chapter 41. Jim. I strummed my fingers on my desk, studying numbers on my computer screen. We had to make changes for sure. I wasn't going to grow this business by taking on anyone and everyone who wanted an opportunity these days. In my board meeting this afternoon, I hoped that I'd gotten that message across to everyone in my acquisitions team, who'd been headhunting like we were trying to buy up every last business on the entire globe. "Jimmy," I heard Colin's voice call out when Summer announced him into my office. I glanced up, needing to give my eyes a break from the list of businesses I was going to send to Alex. I needed a fresh set of eyes and more information before I decided whether or not we needed to pull back on investing. "How's the brain surgeon this fine afternoon?" I asked, leaning back in my chair and happily greeting the man who sat across from me. "Better than your sorry ass." He crossed his leg over the other and reclined back. "How long have you been staring at that computer?" "I think you know the answer to that. Alex most likely wants to kick my ass, though." I chuckled, resting my chin on my fist. "Well, I'm only here to ensure this damn documentary for the neuroscience wing at St. John's is finally in my past, but if he wants to kick your ass, I might stay to watch that," he joked. "What's going on with you?" "We lost our deal to fucking Bracken a week or so ago, and ever since, it's had me thinking that we need to slow down. We're turning into fucking sharks, feeding on chum in the water these days. I'm not going to lose my grip on this company by expanding too hard and too fast." "And so he's doing hard cutbacks." Alex walked into the room holding papers in his hand. I knew he was here to argue about what I'd emailed him. "What the hell is this, man?" "That was faster than I imagined," I grinned at him as he sat next to Colin across from my desk. Colin laughed. "Here we go. We're not dropping anyone, but cutbacks, yes," I said to Alex, ignoring Colin. "We're just trimming the fat." "This is because you lost to Bracken, isn't it?" "Partially. But I couldn't have won that battle no matter how hard I tried. We need to take a step back some." I nodded at the spreadsheet he held in his hand from the data I'd sent him. "Those businesses are not developing as well as we thought they would. We'll be throwing money away soon enough." "Kicking some businesses out of the nest and letting them learn to fly on their own, eh?" Colin chimed in. Alex glanced up from the paper and looked at me. "Some of these poor little birdies won't figure it out before they hit bottom." "I'm not that big of an asshole, despite what most people believe, Alex," I said. "I'm not dropping anyone. We'll cut back, and either they'll work harder to increase growth or they can find a new company that is more suited to help them." "I get it," Alex nodded in agreement. "Some of these have lost buyers' interest, and some are flat out bad with reviews." "The hotel chain with multiple bedbug complaints?" I sighed. "I'm not dying on that hill. This is why we need to either be more invested or pull back completely. We can only help so much. They need to be willing to do the rest." "It's pretty much 5 o'clock, Colin said. "I left the office early to ensure my shit was done and over." He glanced over at the spreadsheets Alex held. "Unless I'm on your little black list and have to learn to fly on my own." "You're good. When we go to launch, I have a feeling this will be the best introduction to medical science since Jake's Heart Institute. Having cameras in the room while he instructs on his surgeries, it's Jakey's dream come true." I smiled at Colin's remark. "If we can get you to do the same, I have a feeling St. John's will officially be on the map." "Slow down, cowboy. I thought you were taking things slow." Colin laughed, standing up and walking over to my office fridge and pulling out a bottle of water. "Speaking of which, now that we have your complete attention, you realize that if you back out on Saturday, Jake's going to wipe the floor with your ass, right?" "Fuck," I said, rubbing my forehead. I had planned to go through more. "A man who despises excuses," Alex leaned back in his chair across from me, "is about to drop one on his poor brother. It's the only thing Jake wants to get out of his way before little Junior gets here in 2 weeks. Hasn't he considered the fact that our lame-ass bike ride up to Big Sur is potentially dangerous for a soon-to-be father?" "Oh, hell," Colin said, taking another drink of his bottled water. "You know," he looked over at Alex, "I'm confident Jake hasn't considered the death rates of taking his street bike up the coast with his brother and friends." "I'm serious," I said. "We did that shit before Jake was about to have a kid. I'm pretty sure Ash would like to." "Save it, Jim," Alex said. "Don't go into the dangers of taking out our street bikes. I think we should focus more on the dangers of you being glued to work and hardly even going out with us at all for over a month now. Jesus." "Yeah," I said, not daring to allow the topic of Avery to come up. Everyone had left it alone, and that's exactly how I wanted it. "What time and where are we meeting up?" "Jake's house at 6 in the morning tomorrow." Colin stood. "I'll see you there. I feel like I haven't slept in weeks with all these lined-up surgeries and neurology consultations. It seems like I've been busier this month than I was during my entire residency." "You look like hell," I smiled as I stood and started to pack my shit into my bag. "I just didn't want to insult you after you drove all this way to make sure I wasn't lying when I texted you that your documentary was good." "I don't trust texts," he smirked. "A chick tried to dump me over a text, and when I went to see her, she said she didn't mean it." "What the hell?" Alex laughed. "Dead serious," Colin said, turning to leave. "I told her that maybe she didn't mean it then, but I meant it now. Anyway, I'm out," he said, waving and leaving my office the way he'd waltzed in. Cool as a cucumber. That was Colin. "See you, Col," I said, knowing my friend was probably exhausted from work. I felt bad that he had to drive here to confirm that he was good to go with his part on the new wing of the hospital. My work was hard, but I wasn't saving and changing lives the way Colin was. "You enjoy the guys tomorrow," Alex sighed as he stood. "I've got to meet Colin's worst enemy." I frowned. "You're kidding. Tell me you're making the mistake of hooking up with her, or otherwise I'm going to assume it's because she's a bitch who's overstepped her bounds with my VP. "It was my idea, dipshit," he said. "Since you and Avery split, I haven't had time for jack shit outside of this place. I have to go over the final numbers for the quarter with her. It's not that big of a deal. I just didn't want to drop it on Colin after he showed up tonight, looking tired as fuck. Now I'm definitely sucked into this bike ride." I scratched my forehead. "What are best friends for?" He laughed, then left my office. I had been running hard, and so was almost everyone else around me these days. I knew precisely why Colin had driven up here, too. These guys hadn't seen me as much because I'd been buried in work, and I knew what they were thinking. It was because of Avery. Sadly, throwing myself into work was the best healing remedy for the pain in my chest. I was so madly in love with that woman. I still couldn't imagine myself without her, but I couldn't imagine myself with a woman like her, either. Fucking lies and secrets. It's all our relationship added up to be. And that was what cut me the deepest. If Avery had loved me as she said she did, I wouldn't have been left in the dark with her past. Maybe a fast and adrenaline-filled ride up the coast on my street bike would do me good. We took off from Jake's house bright and early, and the love for being on the bike, especially riding up the coast, was coursing through me. There was something about controlling all this horsepower, bringing it and me through the turns, laying it over hard, and finding the apex to where I pulled smoothly out of the turns. It was fucking magical, and made me return to my carefree days when I did this all the time with my brother Colin and Alex. Pacific Coast Highway wound through the side of the cliffs above the ocean, and with the tight curves and the sea below us, it was my favorite place to be on the bike, especially on this particular ride farther north to Big Sur. After arriving and having lunch at our favorite diner, all of us still acting like adrenaline junkies from the ride up the coast, we walked across the street and sat at a bench near a vista point, seeing the waves crash below us. "Damn," Colin said, leaning his elbows back to the table behind him and stretching out his legs. "It's almost like you can appreciate the ocean more from this vantage point." "What? You'd rather be up here with waves violently crashing the shore instead of checking out the ladies on the shoreline?" I asked, sitting on the table and using the seat to prop up my feet. "You must have lost your mind somewhere back there." Jake sat on the far corner of the long picnic bench, sitting and leaning against the table with his legs stretched out and crossed. Being on a bike for hours made one's body beg to stretch out after all that crouching. My brother shook his head and pulled off his square aviator glasses. "You are kidding, right?" he asked me. "You do know what time of the year this is, don't you?" Colin laughed while I stared out at the ocean. Right. My God, November came out of nowhere, I said. You're going to miss the birth of your nephew if you don't get your head out of that company and come up for some air, Jake said. It's fucking ridiculous. What is that place to you now? A hellish cocoon that you hide in since you and Avery called it quits? Assume what you want about that job, Jacob, I said. I knew your sorry ass would bring it up eventually. And how I'm the dick in the equation? What the hell is wrong with you? Jake stood up. This isn't about Avery, Jim. It's about my fucking brother. Before her, you were a control freak workaholic. He walked toward where he faced me, both of us escalating in our irritation. And after her, you're right back to the grind, huh? You have no idea. Right, Jake snapped, cutting me off. Let me guess. I have no fucking idea what it takes to run the goddamn company, he mocked me in some fucked up tone. No, Dad, I don't. I don't want to fucking know either. What I do know is that when you were with that woman, the whole damn place didn't fall apart, did it? It still fucking ran like the well-oiled machine it is. Why are you bringing this shit up? I asked, pissed off and ready to blow up. Because we finally had you back. Fuck, we actually had you back better than we ever had you before. And now it's this shit again. Say what you want, Jake, I answered. Leave Avery out of it. You're the one who showed me through Avery that you could have a relationship outside of that fucking place. Now it's over and you're buried in it again. You'll never understand. You know what? Fuck you, Jimmy, he said, angrier than I'd ever seen my brother. I can't ever have a normal conversation with you. After all these years, you still use this fucking bullshit CEO tone with me. Fuck that. I don't work for you. I want my goddamn brother, for fuck's sake. I want my kid to have his uncle. You're so buried in that place that I'm pretty fucking sure you'll just have your secretary send cards. Oh, calm down, Jake, Jesus Christ, I said. You make no sense. Maybe not to you, he answered. All right, Colin interrupted. Fucking enough between you two. He exhaled while Jake threw his hands up and walked away in frustration. Fuck, I said, annoyed with my brother, watching as he walked down the coastline from where we were, calming down. Is he that wound up that I'm working again? I leaned my elbows on my knees. If I'd known Avery and our breakup would turn my brother against me, I would have never gone down that road in the first place. It's not that, Colin said, turning some to face me. What happened between you and Avery exactly? Was she hiding shit from you? Did you even give her a chance to speak her side of the story of her background check? I haven't been able to get past that. Jim and Avery split over a background check. It's more complicated than that. She made me look like a jackass for an entire month, shutting me down when I'd question why she wouldn't take her ex to court. Poor Addie. I exhaled, feeling the anger over the idea of it all again. That little girl has no one to protect her from her loser of a father. I fucking hate addicts. And Avery was in his corner the entire time. I glanced over at Colin. All because she was just like him. It would have been nice if that part of her life had come up in conversation. Would you have kicked her ass to the curb if it had? Her charges were so fucking long ago, and she's clearly pulled herself out of living that kind of life. I ran my hand through my hair and looked out at the ocean. I would have never broken it off over her past, Colin, I said. It wasn't about that, not entirely anyway. It was mainly the fact that she was still enabling this bullshit because of her past. I know all too well how fucked up it is to enable an addict like that, much less bring an innocent kid around that shit and making excuses for doing so as if you aren't hiding from your secrets. It fucking reminds me of our mom. Jake wants to stomp off like that after I've done nothing but carry the weight of what that woman did to us. I shielded him from everything, and then I took Dad's seat in the company so Jake didn't feel the pressure. He has no idea how much I love his stupid ass, and I hate that work might do exactly what he said, and I end up having some weird, distant relationship with my nephew. You do let that place swallow you up. Jake's right about that. You also know you can run that company and still be present like you were when you were with Avery, Colin said. Listen, we've grown up together, And I know for a fact that you still struggle with hating your mom for what she did to you. Don't sit here and tell me I shouldn't hate that bitch, I said. Your hatred for the woman is being projected. His voice was low and sympathetic. No room for error, he said with a smile. It's the rule Jacob and I live by as surgeons. We have to or we lose a patient. You, however, live by that rule harder than anyone I've ever seen in my life. It's all stemming from the bullshit you're carrying around with you because of what your mom did. You project all your shit onto something else. You can't hold down a goddamn relationship, even when it's a fucking stupid mistake like you made with Julia or Lillian. Mostly a good one like you had with Avery. No room for error? I softened up some. Well, in Julia or Lillian's cases, those women were the epitome of the word error. He laughed. I'm not shitting you, though. You have deep-seated issues, and they're fucking with you big time. Even if I agreed that you might be correct that I don't give anyone a chance, perhaps in Avery's case specifically, I don't know. It was like as soon as I found everything out, all I saw was my mom, someone who was okay to put her child in danger to cover her secrets. It's just, I don't know, it's a lot. That's when therapy comes in, my man, Colin said. I work arm in arm with therapists, and I know they can help you get all this scarred-up shit out of your system. You need to talk to someone, though. You have to let go of this hatred for your mom. And if I can't? I asked him, knowing he was right, even though I wished I could tell him he was full of shit. There was no denying what he was saying was accurate. Then what? You lose Avery for good, even after she was brave enough to get help and try to fix herself, Jacob said. What are you talking about? I asked, pulling off my sunglasses and looking at him as he approached. She went to rehab? Was she using? This is what I'm fucking talking about. Colin stood and stretched. Look at you jumping to accusations. He snapped his fingers. And just like that, too. She didn't go to rehab, you dick, Jake answered. She and Ash have gotten pretty close since you broke up. Carmen had a friend in nursing who went through a similar situation as Avery did, so she started going to AA meetings to be surrounded by people with similar experiences who could show their support and encourage her. They've been going to meetings every Friday for weeks, and Ash said that Avery's done some intense work on herself as a result. She even decided to sell that Aston Martin to pay for lawyers so she can get custody of Addison. Say what you will, but she's taking care of herself and doing the work that needs to be done. And she's doing it for herself, which is more than I can say for most people in her situation. My lips were suddenly dry. It never even crossed my mind that she would change anything, let alone face her problems and fight to do what's right. I'd slammed the door on her and our relationship the second I saw that report. I'd lumped her into my mom's category and threw away the key. Colin's revelation to me that I projected my issues onto others was slapping me in the face at this very moment. Wow, I looked at Colin. You were fucking right. Both of you. I guess Mom took away my ability to believe people can be redeemed, huh? I was half joking, but if I was honest, part of me felt like I might spontaneously cry, and I think the guys could tell. That's why you need therapy, Jake said thoughtfully. That's what you gotta fix, Jimmy, Colin said. I've got some friends that you can reach out to. You just need to learn to let the fucking hate go, man. Once you get some help, maybe you won't blow up your next relationship, Jake said with a shrug. Well, I smiled at both Colin and Jake. Glad this bike ride turned into a gym therapy session for us. You're lucky you have Colin, Jake smiled. I couldn't give a fuck before he started talking sense into your stubborn ass. Let's go before I decide to throw you over the cliff as my therapy, I said. Let's do it, Colin agreed. I knew the work that I needed to do wasn't going to be easy, but I needed to let go of the resentment I held toward my mother. She'd made horrible decisions, but she didn't control my life anymore. As much as I hated her for what she'd done to my father, brother, and me, I needed to forgive her. Forgiving someone who never bothered to apologize is not the easiest thing to do, but I knew I was doing it for me, not her. My therapist told me to write a letter to my mother, and when I was done, light it on fire and let my feelings go with my words. I didn't feel some kind of weight being lifted from my shoulders or anything by doing the deed, but I can say with certainty that I felt lighter somehow. I guess it was put to the test when I came to the hospital for the birth of my nephew, and I saw Avery in passing. I didn't see the addict, the liar, or the one who'd hurt me by keeping her secrets from me. I saw a woman whose face and bright blue eyes had always spoken to my soul. She looked healthier and happier than I'd ever seen her, and even though she was no longer mine, knowing she was in a good place made me feel extremely content. I wanted to stop her and talk, but what would have come of that if I had? Would we have tried this thing again? I knew she was working on herself, and I didn't want to get in the way of that. More than that, I knew I still had a lot of work to do on myself. I was still a fucking workaholic, and those issues almost had my therapist ready to put me in a straitjacket. I had a long road to travel unraveling years of issues, and there's no way I'd bring Avery or Addie back into my life until I figured out how to live it better without needing Avery to be the one to help. This was all on me, and for the first time in my life, I was the one working on fixing myself.
Chapter 42. Avery. Who would have imagined how freeing and marvelous life could be when leaving one's guilt and burdens of their past in the damn past? It wasn't an easy road, but what helped was staying in contact with Javier and Ash during the rough times. Once I started down the road to forgiveness, dismantling my defenses wasn't always easy. At times I found myself feeling alone and even a bit depressed. As strange as it sounded, I'd grown used to the chaos, and sometimes it felt like I didn't know what to do with myself without it. That was my dysfunction. I hadn't been addicted to drugs for a long time, but I had been addicted to the chaos and the fight to survive. Now things were different, and I was learning how to enjoy the peace that my second chance had gifted me. Derek had completed his 90-day rehab, but against the advice of his counselors, he decided to move back home to his parents' house instead of staying in Florida and moving into a sober living facility. His relapse followed shortly after he arrived in Southern California. When Derek had initially gone to Florida, Javier had encouraged Larry and Annette to attend counseling for families of addicts to learn how to stop their cycle of codependency and enabling, but they chose not to participate. After Derek's relapse, however, they changed their tune. Derek had his sponsors, and they managed to persuade him to go back to Florida and stay there, and they convinced Larry and Annette to get help that they needed too. Derek was addicted to drugs, and they were addicted to Derek. It was a horrible cycle, and it needed to be broken. Addie and I were moving through life, one happy meal at a time. Her uplifted spirits and constant storytelling kept me going through the tough times as well. She was the reason we spent nearly every other weekend with Jake and Ash. I still couldn't believe that handsome little son of theirs. Little John had big blue eyes, a head full of dark black hair, and he was already crawling at 6 months old. The day that sweet little chubby cherub was born was the first time I saw Jem again. We shared a glance and a smile, and that was it. We left and continued going our separate ways. I wouldn't lie and say I felt nothing, or that I was okay with him walking away. Letting him go again without so much as a conversation was the hardest damn thing I'd done since getting on this new road to recovery. As much as I wanted to regret what had happened between us, me losing the best thing that ever happened to me, I wouldn't. I couldn't regret what I'd done, and I wouldn't make any excuses for it. If it never happened, I would have never realized that I needed help. I would have never sought help and started working on myself. So as much as I could have wallowed in self-pity or cast blame, I wouldn't. He was the best thing that had ever happened to me for many reasons, but mainly for leading me to find the road of self-love. I knew now that it was impossible to love someone without genuinely loving yourself first, and he'd given me that gift. For the first time in my life, I could honestly say that I loved myself, and that was worth more to me than anything. The other gift he'd given me was Ash. I was sitting next to Colin in the back seat of Jake's Range Rover, heading with Jake and Ash to the yacht to celebrate her birthday. We were close to the port where the boat was docked, waiting for us to board. Springtime on the ocean? I knew this was going to be exciting. Ash's dad and stepmom were caring for the kids at Jake and Ash's beach house so the grown-ups could enjoy this 3-day event. Jacob Mitchell! Ash reached over and gripped his arm as he turned into the parking area, and I saw their massive-ass boat lit up like fucking Christmas. Why the hell does the boat look like Jim has been hosting clients on it? Jake took her hand and kissed the back of it. They're your clients, Angel, he said. Now we mustn't be rude to everyone who has come to celebrate April 14th, the very day the world was blessed when you entered it. Good God, Colin said, eyeing me with a smirk. You two should just keep this damn yacht excursion to yourselves. Spare us the sappy BS, Jakey. I'm sure you and Avery are so devastated that your single butts might run into a lovely single man or woman, too. He teased, with a wink through the rearview mirror. Damn it, I said as Jake parked the car. My secret is out now. I'm not here to celebrate Ash's big day. I was only showing up for dudes and booze. Same here, Colin said. Well, the booze part anyway. These guys aren't my type. He laughed. Well, you two might be spending it that way. Ash looked back at us. If Jake invited my gallery clients, I might not even see him tonight. Oh, you'll see me. Even if I have to steal away the birthday girl. All right, kids, let's get it started, he said, and that's when I was swept up into a tornado of bliss and craziness. The yacht was luxurious beyond my wildest dreams. The party crew and catering were out of this world, and I ate more than my share. After moving through crowds of people and meeting Ash's clients, I was ready to give myself a break and have a martini. It was empty at the bar area, everyone hanging out in their own crowds, enjoying the music, the dancing, and the enchanting atmosphere after the boat took off a couple of hours ago, cruising through the bay. Even at the bar, situated under the overhead deck, the cool breeze blew through and kissed at my face. I loved the salty air, and this martini was adding to my relaxation. Excuse me, ma'am. I popped the olive in my mouth after cracking some lame joke to the bartender, and I turned to the man at my left. Sir, I said, seeing Jim's brilliant green eyes, spellbound by his presence. Does your husband approve of you, sitting here at the bar all by yourself? I eyed him as he sipped his bourbon. His expression was light and happy. I thought I'd never see that look again. Why would my husband disapprove? I asked, playing along like I would have when we were in England. I hadn't seen him in so long that I didn't know if we were still the same people anymore, but I wanted to talk with him, laugh with him, more than anything. Well, you're dressed as if you're here and single. He nodded to where everyone was dancing and enjoying the night out to sea. And there's plenty of men out there, eyeing you in this stunning dress you're wearing. I looked in the direction he looked, and then my eyes met his playful ones. Interesting. To answer your question, though, I'm not quite sure what my husband would think, I shrugged. I haven't seen him in many, many months. Months? Jim's eyes widened as he sat next to me at the bar. What the hell happened? Long-distance relationship? It all started on our honeymoon. I waved the bartender over and ordered another martini. We got all caught up in this Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn love story, stayed at an amazing castle, and who would have thought we'd turn into the pair? The modern-day version, of course. I see you still have your head, so maybe you're trying to say that he's the one who got his head cut off? Alas, no, I sighed. Anne Boleyn had a few secrets that she chose not to divulge to her beloved Henry. You know, past misdeeds. It turns out that Anne and I had that in common, and we were too stupid to speak up. He eyed me. I do recall that King was extremely hurt, and his rage, perhaps his madness of insecurities and his own personal demons, led him to do the worst thing possible to his wife. Could it be possible that your husband did the same? I'm not sure. Just as Anne wasn't sure what the hell was going on in Henry's mind when he had her executed.
Do you believe the Queen was innocent?
I believe the Queen had no other choice in her mind than to keep things from Henry. Unlike that Queen, however, I didn't have people plotting to get my head lopped off. He smirked.
This is a sad story.
Does it also have a sad ending?
I mean, for you and your husband, that you haven't seen for months.
Not necessarily. I took a sip of my martini. I don't know about my husband, but like Anne being stuck up in that tower, I sort of went through my own darkness when I learned how very wrong I was to my husband. I wanted to continue to hate everyone and everything for it all going to hell, but it took losing my husband to gain my knowledge that he'd been right about a lot of things. I was just too blind to see it. Jim's face grew serious.
I believe this is the part where you can no longer compare yourself to Anne Boleyn and the Mad King who had her killed.
No, I said, curious and smiling at him.
Well, perhaps your husband was mad like that king, dealing with his own shit, but he got the hell over it, and it took him seeing his beautiful wife again to help him realize he had to have her back in his life. The Mad King never changed, he smirked. This is where your story should have a better ending, I would assume.
I felt my heart beating, as it always had when I was at a loss for words with Jim. This beautiful face and his mesmerizing eyes. I would hope that, since I still have my head, it does end happily. His forehead creased while he laughed.
I've missed the hell out of you. I'm not here to ask you to take me back, but I have to have you in my life again.
If you're not here to ask me back into your life, sir. I reached for his hand that held his bourbon, and he turned his hand up to hold mine. Then why in the hell are you here? Jim pulled me against him.
Jesus, I don't know where to start, but I think I need to start by telling you that I am so sorry. Whether or not you can ever forgive me for the things I've done and said, I want you to know that I love you, Avery.
I framed his face with my hands, gently kissed his soft lips, and I smiled into his searching eyes. I forgave you a long time ago, and more than that, I forgave myself for everything that caused me to hurt you.
You have no idea how happy it makes me to hear you say that,
he softly said.
I am just at a loss for words. You look more beautiful than ever.
If it helps you find some words, I'll say this. I never stop loving you. Ever.
Chapter 43. Jim. Alex and I had been caught in a last-minute meeting, leaving us the last two to board the yacht before the thing set sail with more guests than I'd imagined Jake would have invited. These were Ash's friends and beloved clients, though. My sister-in-law was as passionate about her clients as Jake was about his heart patients, so I shouldn't have been surprised by the turnout. But I was stunned when I finally spotted Avery. As I stood in conversation with Jake, Ash, Colin, and Alex, my eyes drifted over to Avery, the most beautiful woman on the entire boat. She stood out in her blue strapless and form-fitting dress, and I could only imagine how her blue eyes sparkled under the light where she stood, talking to Clay and Joe. I could see how much happier she seemed all the way from here. She glowed radiantly, and I had to resist the urge to run over to her and scoop her into my arms. I wanted to wait for the perfect time before I approached her, and then, like a gift from heaven, she went to the bar, alone. It was a do-or-die moment for me. I knew Avery was the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, but how did she feel about me after our last conversation? I had so many questions, and as soon as I spoke to her, it was like we'd never skipped a beat. I didn't know if I would ever be lucky enough to hear her tell me she loved me again, and when she did, she answered my prayers. I stole her away to a more private area of Jake's yacht, and we sat away from the noise. Jake and Ash smiled and nodded in approval when I looked to them to make sure they wouldn't bust my ass for leaving and taking Ash's friend with me as the night rolled on. "So, that's what I've been up to since you last saw me and how I've dealt with all of those crippling issues," she said. I was so entranced by the way her blue eyes twinkled as she told me her story. Her beautiful smile and her scratchy voice were so sexy they had me silenced throughout most of our conversation. You look so much happier, I said. Then I smiled and brought her hand to my lips from across the small table. I can't even think. I laughed. You look happier too. She used her free hand to trace her fingers across my forehead. Your usual frown line is gone. She chuckled. Believe it or not, I had my own shit to work out. Leave it to my brother and Colin to tell me I needed counseling. No, really? She pulled back and crossed her arms, staring at me with her adorable, questioning look. Working too much? Yeah, probably trying to break you up with that damn phone you dumped me for, I'm sure. She laughed, and all I could do was smile and look at her like some fucking idiot. Actually, that's partially true, I smirked. I'd reignited the old flame of being married to my work after we split up. I sighed and looked deeply into her eyes. It turns out that I brought a lot of hatred into my life and kept it there due to my mom's addictions. Letting that all go, plus no longer hiding in work, feeling like I had to fix anything and everything, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. It definitely took some time in therapy to get me to forgive that woman. Holy shit, she said. I would have never imagined. You and me both. However, it was why I was such an unapproachable dick to you when I found out about the background check. I'm so sorry for the way I handled all of that. Don't be, she smiled. It's all in the past. I let it go a long time ago. I can tell. I pinched my lips together. Because I truly don't deserve this second chance with you. Yes, you do. We both deserve what we want most in life. I say that assuming I am what you want most in life, she said playfully. You have no idea how accurate those words are. I stood. Do you? I stopped talking and ran my hands through my hair. Fuck, I can't think straight. She rose and wrapped her arms around my waist. Jim, it's still me. Stop being so damn nervous. What do you think about a change of scenery? I have a room to myself, I said, holding her. Perhaps you'd like to join me in the spa on the balcony in my suite? There's a fucking spa on your balcony? She asked with wide eyes. I would have to see this to believe it. She stood up on her toes and her lips met my chin, sending an electric charge through me. Not kidding. Jake went all out on this goddamn boat. I texted Jake letting him know that Avery and I were going to call it a night, and I had a request sent to the galley to deliver food to my quarters. It was still my Avery, right? She was probably starving. All the food you could possibly want will be delivered shortly, I said, looking back at her trailing me down the spiral staircase. Better than flowers, right? Damn right, she said with a laugh. When we got into my room, Avery and I laughed when we spotted her duffel on my bed. Jake thinks of it all, doesn't he? I said. I would have never guessed, but I am also willing to bet that after all these months, Ash and Jake have had some good pillow talk about us. They probably knew this was inevitable, she said. I've missed you. She was so sincere that it stopped my thought process. Again. Let's make the most of this 3-day boating experience, shall we? I said. Through those doors you can change into your swimsuit and meet me out in the spa. She chewed on her bottom lip, then took her bag back in the large bathroom area. Once we were out in the spa that overlooked the bay, Avery sat in front of me, leaning her head against my chest and rubbing her hands along my legs. This is the most beautiful scene, sitting in a jacuzzi on a massive yacht, gazing at the lights on the shoreline. Fuck. This is the most amazing experience of my life. And here I thought taking you to a castle was, I teased, finally loosening the fuck up. I'd been acting as though it was the first time we'd ever met. Well, she turned her face up to bring her lips to where I could kiss them. We didn't have the buffet there like we have here. I ran my hand over her belly. I never believed I'd hold you again. I fantasized more than once about finding you and bringing you back into my life. We're meeting again at the perfect time, I think, she said. Then she was the one who fulfilled my aching need to touch her again. Her hand came over mine, guiding it down into her bikini. Are you sure you want I want what I've been fantasizing about since losing you, she said, her voice low as she slipped off her bikini bottoms. That night you first made me come. Remember it? She asked while her head rested further under my neck. You think you can match that? I can do much more than match that, gorgeous, I said, taking the strings of her top, untying them and kissing the back of her neck and over her shoulders. Damn, her moans. I fucking missed her moans more than I knew. You're mine, Avery. Prove it, she said while I covered her hardened nipple with my hand and used my other to gently massage her clit. I loved every part of this. Avery's ass pushing against my hard cock while I dipped my fingers into the warm pussy I longed to bury myself inside of again. Fuck, Jim. Right there, she said. Avery loved it slow when I massaged this area, putting pressure at a certain point. I knew that once I brought my thumb into play and ran it in circles over her clit, I would have the woman coming in my hand. That was the only thing I wanted. Oh, sweet Jesus, she groaned, her fingers digging into my legs like they did the first time we'd done this. God, it's been too long. I need to see your eyes, gorgeous. I need to see you come. She turned her head, and those glossy blue eyes were mine again. Fuck yes, I said, caught up in this with her. Let it go, Ave. My voice was low and breathless as I watched her ride out the orgasm. She dug her nails into my legs and her lips reached to mine, our tongues and mouths fighting aggressively for the reunion they longed for. After Avery came slowly down, my fingers slipped out of her and I held her, tasting her delicious kiss. I was in pain for her, for more. I need all of you. I pulled away and Avery turned her body to face mine. Now, I said, her lips and teeth running along my neck and chest. We were out of the spa and I was laying Avery on my bed. We were both wet, but I didn't care. I had a feeling this night was going to roll on until morning. Her legs parted for me while I stared at her beautiful pussy. Fuck me, Jim, she said. Deep. I was out of my shorts before I could say another word. I can't promise I'll be gentle, I warned. I don't want you to be, she said as I lined my cock up to her slick sex and began thrusting myself hard and deep into her. My elbows were firmly planted on each side of her head, and her hands covered my ass while I felt her warm, tight, and clenching pussy, pulling and accepting me with every thrust I used to bury myself deep into her. Oh my God! Avery dug her fingers into my lower back. Fuck, I loved to feel her do this. Like that, Jim. Right there. Her breath caught when my tip ran deep into her. I love you, she called out, and I held myself still, knowing her sounds and her tightening around my cock meant my girl was coming. I had this obsession of seeing her expressions when she climaxed, her face tightening, and then her biting her bottom lip while I felt her pulsating sex in a spasm around my cock. That was all it took, and then I came so fucking hard. Every last sensation of losing her, needing her, wanting this, and never believing I would have it again was all leaving me while I filled her with my cum. You're mine, she said, running her hands up my back while I rested my forehead against hers and grinned. Next time, I'm riding you. Imagining that, watching her full breasts bouncing for my viewing pleasure made me wish I could instantly recover. I thrust myself into her. I look forward to your magical ways of getting my dick back in the game then, I said, then kissed her lips. I fucking love you with all my heart, gorgeous. How about we do this all night? Why not 3 days? They won't miss us, will they? I slid myself out of her and brought her naked body to lie on mine. Part of me believes this whole birthday party was more of a ruse to get us out to sea together for 3 days. I laughed and swept her hair out of her face. If you're up for 3 days of this, you know I'm not arguing. We've got a lot of time to make up for. Avery and I did exactly that, made up for not seeing each other in far too long. One thing was certain, I had my girl back now. That's all that mattered. After the yacht docked in port, we followed Jake and Ash to their beach house to pick up Addie from Mark and Carmen, and I was positively the happiest man alive, knowing I had Avery back and I was about to reunite with the sweetest baby girl on the planet.
"Promise me you won't be as nervous with Addie as you were with me," Avery teased as we flew up the clear freeway following my speed demon brother.
I'm finally getting both of my girls back. You can't imagine how happy I am. I kissed her hand. So she thinks that you both just moved away from me?
"Yes,"
Avery said.
"She just turned 4, so you'll hear all about that too. That, and I'm sure your little Susie stories will have to come back too."
It's Sally, and don't forget about the rascals, I corrected her with a smile. If Addie does as well seeing me as you imagine, do you think we're moving it too fast if I moved you both in this week? I'm ready, Avery. I want you both forever, and I mean that.
"We're finally ready," she said. "I think between the sex, food, and our private therapeutic sessions on the yacht, I know I'm never letting you out of my life or sight again."
Same here, I said, feeling more confident about this decision I'd wanted to act on for too long, even when we weren't ready. It might have seemed absurd to the outside world, but this was my woman, and I would be a fool if I let her go again, even if it was only to a different house. We've been apart long enough. When we got to the beach house, my nephew and Addie were playing in the gated room. I must have looked like a rude asshole to Carm and Mark, but I wanted to see Addie and John more than anything. Jake scooped up my nephew after the little guy gave me a kiss, and then Addie's eyes met mine, and her smile could have lit up a baseball stadium. God, I missed this little girl. That smile was the prelude to her hugging me tighter than ever before, and I picked her up and held her in my arms.
"I thought I'd never see you again, Jim," she said. "Mom sold my car, too."
I smiled. Her info dump was as adorable as she was. "We'll have to go find another one, won't we?" I said, Addie looking at her mom with the sass I missed so much.
"Yes, and a new house. Mom and I sleep in the same bed, but I don't like it when I can't stretch out good. She always says I steal the covers, but I don't know what she's talking about."
"Can't stretch out good means she can't lay like a starfish," Avery said with a laugh. "What if I told you I never wanted to lose you or your mom again?" I looked at Avery and she nodded. "What if I told you I want you to live in my house in a new room?"
"A new room? Like the one I picked out the decorations for before we moved away?"
she asked, her eyes wide. "Exactly like that," I said. "Just the way you wanted it." She choked my neck and squealed with excitement.
"I love it!"
And more Sally stories too? I probably sounded like a damn fool, but I missed this little girl as much as I'd missed her mother.
"And those darn little rascals," she said with a crinkled-up nose.
"Yes," I laughed. "I think we're all set then. You're moving to your new house, and we'll never have to miss each other again." She pulled back and nodded. "Deal?"
"You got it, mister."
That's when I knew life would change forever. All I knew is that Avery, Addie, and I needed each other. They were my family. I had my life now, and it was finally complete. This was my final step in living the life I'd promised myself I would have after letting that demon of my past rule it for far too long. Those demons were gone, and they were replaced with my 2 beautiful souls of saving grace.
Chapter 44. Avery. It had been 5 months since Jim and I had reunited on Jake's yacht. One might have expected that reconnecting so quickly would have brought about some significant issues after so much time apart. Hell, if I were a betting woman, I would have put money on it. However, this was Jim, and he was different. Everything was different. He'd fallen out of my dreams, and after I'd worked out my issues, I was able to fully appreciate the gift that God had given Addie and me. Jim had guided me in fulfilling my new passion for helping people who'd gone through similar life experiences as me, and he helped me to revamp and expand a women's shelter and support center in Los Angeles. My heart was burdened to share my story and to help encourage others and give hope to those who'd been suffering silently with trauma. I was living proof that there was always hope. We all had a choice to change our lives and live it on our own terms. I needed others to know how necessary it is to forgive yourself, even when it's the hardest thing in the world to do. Nothing brought me greater happiness than helping others come to those realizations. On top of coming home every day to the most handsome and loving man in existence, and the wildest, sweetest daughter, I was living such a fulfilled life. I could never ask for anything more. Addie was back in preschool at Mitchell & Associates, which made it easy for me to pick her up after work. But my favorite was when Jim would surprise me by showing up with Addie at the Women's Center for our McDonald's date night. The man's generosity and love had me constantly on the verge of bursting with pride for the beautiful family we had become. It was meant to be. We were meant to be this family.
You realize you two have to pack sometime today, right?
Jim said, while he sat on the lounge chair next to where Addie and I played in the pool.
We get to fly high,
Addie squealed, floating over to the steps of the pool and climbing out. Jim tossed his laptop into the cushions next to him as Addie darted in his direction, soaking wet.
Hey!
He snatched her by the waist and threw her over his shoulder.
You are going to injure yourself greatly and spend your entire vacation in a hospital, little missy.
Addie, I said, my heart racing, while I stepped out of the pool. You are about to lose your pool privileges for a week if you don't stop running while you're wet. You know the rules.
Sorry, Mama,
she said as Jim pulled my wet daughter to his side, and she clung to him like a little monkey.
Sorry, Jim.
Apology accepted.
He grinned. I pulled Addie from his arms and set her feet on the ground. Listen up, kiddo, I said, eyeing her and Jim. You are way too spoiled, you know? Jim forgives you too easily when you're in trouble. I smirked at him when he bit his bottom lip. You're going to go into your room and start picking out some warm clothes for our trip. Got it?
Yes, Mama.
She sulked and turned back to Jim for some support. Jim quickly brought his attention to the sky, ignoring my daughter as she tried to tempt him to help her out of being scolded. Addie went into the house with her new pal, Frances, Jim's housemaid. I swear if it weren't for Frances, I'd lose half these battles of wills with Jim and Addie. The big bad CEO was the world's greatest softie when it came to Addison. Jim and I laughed when Frances started in on Addison, and Addie took the older woman's hand, listening quietly as she imparted her words of wisdom to back me up on Addie being safe at the pool. That night, after Addie was sound asleep in her room, Jim and I wound down our evening on the top deck of our home. I sat up from where I leaned against his shoulder and placed my wineglass on the table. Okay, I said, seeing Jim close his laptop and slouch against the sofa. All of the work stuff finalized?
I'm sorry I've been neglecting you today.
He ran his hands through his hair.
Since having you and Addie back in my life, bringing work home like this is the worst feeling ever.
I ran my hand over his leg. You're lucky that I can enjoy the breathtaking views from up here when you're working on your laptop at 10 at night. I smiled while he pinched the bridge of his nose and shook his head.
Trust me, this will end. September can be a nightmare for me at times.
I'm not worried about it, I said, scooting closer to him and running my fingertips through his hair. Jim leaned closer to me, and I kissed his forehead.
Thank God for that.
There's something you and I should talk about, I said. My tone made Jim sit up straight, and his eyes met mine with concern. This spoiling stuff with Addie, we have to tone it down a little. It's starting to concern me.
What exactly has you concerned? He questioned. Me giving in to her so easily?
Well, you're a pushover with her, that's for sure. I laughed. I know there's got to be one in the parental role who has to be the mean one, the grown-up. I arched an eyebrow at his lightened expression. We both know that's me, but you're good with rules and mandating she follows them too. He pulled me onto his lap, and I straddled him.
Then what has my beautiful lady so concerned? She's still the same child I adored from the first moment I met her.
I just don't want her to live in a complete fantasy. I need her to learn that everything she has now, living here and in all this luxury, it doesn't come free. She needs to start to understand that you worked hard for it. I don't want too much to come so freely to her. Does that make sense? He licked his lips. I will always work to make you and Addie both the happiest women on the planet, yes. I will have you know that I let her in on how I run the business that provides for us, and so she's getting a good look at how to run a business like a true executive. Oh, really? I smoothed my hands over his shoulders. How exactly did you do that? I had her help me in the office the other day. What the hell? I laughed, imagining that. What happened? Why didn't you tell me? It was nothing. They were concerned about Addie's sneezing and running nose at the preschool. Didn't want to pass around a potential cold. Shit. Her allergies were bad last month, and I forgot to give her allergy meds. Was this when you texted me, asking which ones to buy for her? Correct, he answered. I knew it was allergies when they called me about her runny nose, so I walked down and asked if she'd like to work with me for the day while I sent for her allergy relief. That's the day you left work early and took her to go get ice cream, right? It was easy enough to have Alex handle the meeting I had scheduled, and I could just work from the house. You took her to get ice cream. I arched an eyebrow at him. Of course I did, he smiled. My sweet gal's allergy meds hadn't kicked in yet. He chewed on his bottom lip. You're doing a fine job of derailing my initial concern about her becoming too spoiled and not understanding how hard you worked for the beautiful home she has, amongst everything else. I want her to appreciate it all. Very well, then. He cleared his throat and feigned being serious. Before we left to get ice cream, I had about an hour's worth of work to finalize, so I put her to work as the CEO's best assistant. Right. And I'm sure your secretary and Alex both enjoyed having a kid up there bossing everyone around. Addie was an excellent help to us. I had her walking out a few portfolios this summer. We played a few pranks on Alex, too. He gave me that funny, handsome look whenever he was defending him and Addie. We pranked him only because it's Alex. And, hell, it was fun. He shrugged and smiled. Pranks? I sighed and laughed at his innocent expression. It kept her busy. The best was the paper airplane we made together. He laughed. It was actually important numbers on a term sheet I had printed out for him. I would have naturally walked that down to him in a portfolio, but watching Addie go through the perfect movements of gliding that sucker into his office was priceless. I'll have to have Summer text you the video she took of it. I started laughing. You two are trouble. Only when Mom's not there to bust us. He ran his hands up my thighs while bringing his lips to meet mine. Other than that, Mitchell & Associates vice president delighted in the paper airplane idea, until he unfolded the plane and saw the request for changes on the term sheet. I knew that would piss him off. He hates it when companies send shit back to us, requesting more addendums before signing. Even though I'm glad you found a fun way to deliver shitty news to Alex, I framed Jem's face with my hands. You and Addie can't be trusted sometimes. This story helps the point I'm trying to make. What's your point, Ave? He looked at me in confusion. So I've been thinking about this since we started planning this trip. Please don't get pissed off, but I'm a bit concerned about us taking your company's jet to England, I said. Do you believe it will crash? He looked at me with more confusion. That thing is a 787 Boeing. It's designed as nicely as Jake's yacht. Beds, rooms, everything is on that aircraft. More food than you and Addie could ask for as well. He laughed. Addison wouldn't even know how long she was on the nonstop flight to... I silenced him by pressing my lips against his. There. I ran my thumb across his bottom lip. Now let me finish. This is what I'm talking about. A private airplane. I've flown on your helicopters and one of the company jets already. They are beyond luxurious. I'm wondering if, for this trip, maybe we can book a regular flight for the three of us. Like, one I would have normally taken if I were bringing her out there myself. I hoped I was making sense. I knew Addie was only 4, but I wanted her to appreciate the life we'd been blessed with. I wanted her to know that real life didn't come so easily, and most people would never know the luxury we had access to. Jim was a brilliant businessman who'd worked his ass off to get where he was. Addie needed to have her feet planted on the ground so she didn't lose herself in having things that most kids her age could only dream of. If it weren't for Jim, she wouldn't have anything close to what she had now. I needed to make sure she appreciated all of it and never took it for granted. Jim studied me while I was silent. Do you believe our lifestyle will turn her into a spoiled and unruly child? It's not the lifestyle. I stopped myself and ran my hand over my forehead. I don't know how to put this. I just want a hint of normalcy for her. That's perfectly understandable. Let's go for it with a commercial flight then. Jim pulled out his phone and looked at me. I'll see if we can get a last-minute flight out. First-class tickets will be more difficult to... He paused and eyed me, chewing on my lip. You want us in coach, don't you? The way we would fly if we were not wealthy, correct? Would it be okay? You said work is finalized, except for a few things at your London headquarters when we first get in, and so you won't need the company plane for business stuff. I couldn't discern the look on his face. Was I being ridiculous? It'll work fine. He smiled and then started typing on his phone. Close to 5 minutes later, he chuckled and smiled at me. We're booked out on the first flight in the morning. My phone rang, and I looked and saw Ash was calling. Hey, I said, answering the call. You ready for the big trip tomorrow? I thought I'd throw in a quick goodbye. Sorry that it's so late. I'm excited. We're leaving first thing tomorrow morning now. First thing? She said. Hang on, here's Jake. You're on speakerphone. My kid's out of bed again. How are the lovebirds faring? Jake asked. Jem's excited to be flying commercial tomorrow, I said, smiling at Jem, who was sitting patiently while I put his brother on speakerphone. He's right here. You're flying her out commercial? He laughed. And here I thought you were the charming prince. In fact, I am. Instead of the luxury jet, or first class for that matter, I'm riding with my ladies at the back of the plane. You're joking, right? You understand your long-ass legs won't fit in coach, correct? Hey, we're on a mission to show Addie that not everything is luxurious, Jim insisted. Jake's laughter was making Jim laugh and making me feel like shit. Fuck, I said. I didn't think about you being cramped up on the plane. Damn, I hope you got a layover or 3 before flying out of the States, Jake said with another laugh. Non-stop, Jim said. I'll survive it. It's a small sacrifice to make sure my girls are well taken care of. You'd better hope you got an aisle seat, brother. Avery, Jake called out. Right here. Video this shit for me, please. After the long trip, and seeing Jim do his best to seek comfort at the back of the plane, it was evident to me that I should have thought about the man's height before I started throwing around ideas. We were definitely going to fly back to the States in the company jet, since Alex was flying to London in it the next day. Now we were at the castle where Jim and I shared a lot of firsts. Addie loved the place more than I believed a child her age would. We explored the halls, played silly haunted castle games, Jim being the ghost and hiding all over to scare us. It was 4 days of picnics, walks, and us 3 being a family. The day had finally come when Jim had the stablemen arrive at the house, and his horses were brought up to his massive barn, a mansion for horses. I noted 7 horses were saddled, and I laughed when I looked at Jim carrying Addie down in the adorable riding outfit we bought for her in London. You get to pick out the one you want to ride, Jim said. Wait, I gripped his arm. You promised you were riding with her, and she was sitting in front of you. I did, Mom, he answered. I'm just letting her pick her favorite. We'll be lucky if I can remember how to ride for my teenage years, I said, feeling a bit nervous. Lose that attitude, Jim laughed. Those horses are the most well-trained, best-behaved animals around. However, they'll feed off any fear you have, and you'll regret it later. You're right. It took us a while, but we were now on our way. We rode at a slow pace through the massive amount of acreage at this place, and I basked in the contentment I felt. enjoying this peaceful ride through such beautiful terrain. I felt like we were the only 3 people in all of England. Once Jim saw that I was comfortable on my horse, we picked up our pace. As we trotted through the lush fields, I glanced over at Jim and Addie, and the sight alone made my heart smile with joy at the way they rode his horse together. Jim rode like a true equestrian, all while Addie beamed with pride as she sat safely in front of him. We rode for about an hour when I noticed that we'd circled back to where Jim and I had sat under a walnut tree, overlooking the hills that rolled on forever the first time we were here together. He dismounted, helped Addie down, and then I felt his hands on my hips as he guided me off my horse. "You see," Jim started, taking Addie's hand while I held on to his arm. "Your mom once wished we had time-traveling binoculars." He smirked at me and pointed toward the vast hills of England's stunning countryside.
"But why?"
Addie asked him.
"That's silly."
"Some might think so, but I thought it was a fantastic idea," Jim said, while he led us to the tree, and I smiled at the memory. "You see, your mother wished she could see back in time so she could witness the history of this beautiful land."
"The history?"
Addie's face scrunched up in question.
"Why, though?"
"Because Mommy loves the history of England," I said in an excited voice. "There's so many things that could have happened out there. With my time-traveling glasses, I could have seen when kings and queens rode horses like we did today. Wouldn't something like that be pretty cool?"
"That would be,"
she said with a look that made it clear she was humoring me. "But that's not all," Jim added. "If you could put on those glasses, you could see your mom sitting next to me at this tree. It's where I realized she was the most delightful woman I'd ever met," Jim said with a smile. "I wished I could marry her then and there." I looked at Jim in confusion. This was a beautiful side of the story I never got. Jim looked at me. "We were both chasing ghosts back then, in our own ways, of course. So asking you to marry me then, well, that just wasn't the right time." He walked over to me and took my hand in his. "But being here now is different. I had to sort out so many things to be able to appreciate the woman who had stolen my heart in a way no other woman could," he said. "Perhaps we had to go through the fire in order to purify our love for each other." I grinned. That's one way of putting it. Jim's solemn expression didn't waver. "Avery Gilbert, you have fascinated me from the first moment I laid eyes on you, and you have changed my life in ways I didn't know possible. I love you so deeply, and even more so than the first moment that I knew I wanted you in my life forever." I reached for my throat, almost about to choke on the lump that was suddenly there. Was he really doing this? "You bring me peace that I can't explain. You breathed life into me from the moment you sat next to me on that plane. You've given me everything and asked for nothing except for my love," he said. "Before you, I was on autopilot, going through the motions of life but never truly living it. I can't go another day without you understanding that you and Addie are the best part of my life, the part of my life that was missing. I humbly ask you to trust me and know that I will always love and protect you, and I promise to devote my life wholly to you and Addie above all things. Will you please bestow upon me the highest honor I'll ever achieve by becoming my wife?" "Oh, God," I said, tears pulling in my eyes. "Oh, my God." He pulled out a blue box and opened it. "If you'll have me, then I hope you'll enjoy this ring, one that I believe a king from long ago would have given the queen he loved so dearly." "Without sending her to that tower, of course." I laughed, cried, and then hugged him so tightly that I couldn't speak. "I think we both served our time in that tower when we were apart for far too long," he said, as I felt him laugh, and then I pulled back to lose myself in his shimmering eyes. "Yes, of course, yes," I said as Jim brushed the tears from my cheeks. "But are you sure? Marriage might make—" "What? Might make me the happiest and most complete man on the planet?" Jim said, and then silenced me with a small kiss. "I love you, Avery. There's no doubt in my mind." I watched as Jim turned and knelt, as he had the first time he'd met Addie, bringing himself to her level. Addie was smiling, but I could tell she was confused.
You are my best girl, and the one I have the most fun with. He brushed his finger over her nose. I can't marry your mom unless I ask something pretty big of you as well.
How big?
Addie said. Huge. His eyes widened as he dramatized his answer. Remember that one morning when you and I made green eggs and ham?
Yes.
She crinkled up her nose and laughed. He took her hands in his. Do you remember what you told me you wished for me to be for you that morning? Her lips twisted in thought, and my ugly cry was in full effect. Was Jim asking Addie for her approval too?
For you to be my real daddy, she said. When I say my prayers at night, I always ask for it to come true one day. Do you think it can?
I think it can, Jim smiled. In fact, that was the huge question I was going to ask. I wanted to know if you would still like me to be your daddy. Addie's reaction was priceless as she hugged Jim, and then I heard her crying. I walked over to where Jim had swallowed her up in his arms. Addison, I said, rubbing her back. She looked at me through teary eyes and smiled, my own tears streaming down my face as I wiped hers away. These are happy tears, yes? I asked her.
Jim loves us both so much, she informed me, hugging me tightly. We can finally be a real family now. He asked, and we have to say yes, Mommy. He's the best daddy ever.
He certainly is, I said to her, then looked at Jim, and he smiled brilliantly. I have something special for you too, Addie, he said, pulling out another blue box. It's a charm on a necklace. Its symbol means that I'll be your daddy forever. I'll always protect you, care for you, and love you more than you can ever know.
Oh my goodness,
she smiled at Jim.
Can I wear it forever too?
Jim grinned. I truly hope you do, he said, putting the necklace on her and smiling. Forever. I watched as Addie held the charm out that Jim had clasped around her neck. That's the infinity symbol, I said, still kneeling next to Jim. It means that Jim will love you longer than forever, that his love will never end. Yes, and now you'll always know that I'll love you as my very own daughter for all of our forevers together. I'm just not sure if you said yes or not. I watched Jim's forehead crinkle in humor.
Yes, forever, you, me, and Mommy.
She hugged him again. Thank God they all said yes. I heard Colin's voice and then turned to see the entire gang was here. The reason for the other saddled horses. Sorry, but I figured I'd be fighting that damn horse for the rest of the night if Jim didn't get his words out. Ash was running toward me, and we collided in a tight embrace. That was the most precious thing I've ever witnessed. She sniffed and stepped back. I videoed the entire thing, but started crying after you said yes. Then Jake rescued the video, so forgive my sobbing sounds. She handed me the phone, so it's probably really going to suck for Jim to watch after mine and Colin's commentary. Jake laughed. I think it'll add to the moment nicely for you, though. Ash had no other option than to hand me the phone after she lost it completely once Jimmy proposed to Addie next. Jake smiled and hugged me. Welcome to the family, kid, he said, then went toward where Ash was embracing Addie. You sure you want in on a binding contract with this guy? Alex smirked at me as Jim approached, and Addie was already showing her beautiful necklace to Ash, Jake, and Colin, proudly telling them that Jim was her dad now. The binding contract will be signed. I laughed, hugging Jim's best friend, then leaned into Jim as he brought his arm around me. The real question is, can all of you take us? We accepted you both a long time ago, Jake said as he rejoined us with a wink. Hey, Addie, he said, reaching for her. Let's get out of here and let Mom and Dad look through their time-traveling glasses together. My horse is faster than Jim's anyway.
Yeah, he's sort of my dad now, Jake.
Jake chuckled. Well then, that makes me your uncle. And I expect to hear Uncle Jake come out of that mouth next time. They all rode off together, leaving Jim and me alone to soak up this treasured moment. We sat down next to the tree. God, I love you, I said, tearing up again. I'm at a loss for words. Jim brought his arm around me as we reclined against the tree. So I planned that we'd take off for that little hotel we stayed at before. Then after a night alone, perhaps you and Ash will start in with the wedding arrangements.
It doesn't need to be anything fancy. I laughed.
Fantastic.
He kissed my temple.
Then when we're back in the States, we'll head to the first courthouse we see. The next monumental question I want you to consider heavily is solely up to you and what you believe is best for Addie.
What is it? My mind is still stuck on your amazing proposal.
Well, I was thinking, he said. You know how you got full custody of Addie after Derek got locked up again?
Kinda hard to forget when your kid's dad flunks out of rehab for the third time and then goes on a crime spree before getting sent to prison for the foreseeable future, don't you think? I said with a half laugh. I wished I could say things were going differently for Derek, and he was now the father he should have been. But the truth was that he was better off in prison, and that was precisely where he'd landed himself.
I think we all saw it coming from day one with that guy, he said. That's sort of what has me thinking. With me being surrounded by lawyers daily, I tend to overthink things sometimes, and I worry about things. What happens to Addie if something were to happen to you?
Jesus, I thought, almost in a panic. I'd never thought of anything like that before.
Well, I say all this because I want you to know that I would gladly adopt Addison after we're married.
I shot up and looked at Jim as if he were high or something. That is asking a lot of you. I mean, a lot.
Truthfully, I'd want it no other way. It doesn't change the way I love her or plan to care for her for the rest of her life, though. But it's asking you to trust me as her legal parent. Maybe it's a heavy thing to consider. I just want you to know that I'm all in, 1,000%.
You're the best thing to ever happen to both of us, I answered, turning to face him. I trust that we will be together forever. He pulled me into his arms.
Then it's all settled. He kissed my nose. You will soon be Mrs. Avery Mitchell, and our little wild child will be known to all as Addison Mitchell. Has a damn good ring to it, doesn't it?
I straddled him. What do you say we get these horses back to the house, say goodbye for the night, get in that car and blast up to that castle? Jim arched his eyebrow at me.
I think I should drive this time.
That's the thing about marriage, darling. I used the term we used when we were fake married on our last trip. What's yours is mine now.
Jim chuckled and nipped at my lips. Are you sure you want that pain-in-the-ass company? That's the downside of this marriage, you know. I get a sweet little girl as my daughter, and my gift to you is that damn company.
He laughed.
Still want everything that's mine?
I want the good times, the hard times, and the until death do us part times. I want you, and that's all that matters.
God, I love you. More than words, gorgeous, he said. I'm inclined to fulfill a wedding night wish out, here and right now.
Anybody around?
If they were, he smirked as we lay back on the grass. I think we'd scare them off.
Then hurry up and kiss me. I laughed, and that's when Jim and I took advantage of the gang taking off, so we could celebrate this event alone. I would never allow myself to forget this moment, this day that would change our lives forever. The way Jim's face was lit up with happiness the entire time. Dreams couldn't get better than what I had with this man. My life was fulfilled before this unexpected proposal to my daughter and me. Who would have imagined that after everything I'd been through in my crazy life, I'd be so utterly blessed to have this man as my husband, and more importantly, the new real father to my daughter. My life was abundantly full. Did I deserve it? Before I got help, I would have said no. But now that I was healthy in my heart and mind, my answer was yes. I deserved this happiness. My daughter deserved this family. And we were just getting started. This concludes Mr. Mitchell by Raylin Marks. Narrated by Sarah Puckett and Aidan Snow. Copyright 2020 by Raylin Marks. This unabridged audiobook is published by arrangement with Raylin Marks and was produced in the year 2021 by Tantor Media Incorporated, a division of Recorded Books, which holds the copyright thereto. Please visit tantor.com for more information on our growing library of unabridged audiobooks. first get in, and so you won't need the company plane for business stuff." I couldn't discern the look on his face. Was I being ridiculous? "It'll work fine." He smiled and then started typing on his phone. Close to 5 minutes later, he chuckled and smiled at me. "We're booked out on the first flight in the morning." My phone rang, and I looked and saw Ash was calling. "Hey," I said, answering the call. "You ready for the big trip tomorrow? I thought I'd throw in a quick goodbye. Sorry that it's so late." "I'm excited. We're leaving first thing tomorrow morning now." "First thing?" she said. "Hang on, here's Jake. You're on speakerphone. My kid's out of bed again." "How are the lovebirds faring?" Jake asked. "Jem's excited to be flying commercial tomorrow," I said, smiling at Jem, who was sitting patiently while I put his brother on speakerphone. "He's right here." "You're flying her out commercial?" he laughed. "And here I thought you were the charming prince." "In fact, I am. Instead of the luxury jet, or first class for that matter, I'm riding with my ladies at the back of the plane." "You're joking, right? You understand your long-ass legs won't fit in coach, correct?" "Hey, we're on a mission to show Addie that not everything is luxurious," Jim insisted. Jake's laughter was making Jim laugh and making me feel like shit. "Fuck," I said. "I didn't think about you being cramped up on the plane." "Damn, I hope you got a layover or 3 before flying out of the States," Jake said with another laugh. "Non-stop," Jim said. "I'll survive it. It's a small sacrifice to make sure my girls are well taken care of. You'd better hope you got an aisle seat, brother." "Avery," Jake called out. "Right here." "Video this shit for me, please." After the long trip, and seeing Jim do his best to seek comfort at the back of the plane, it was evident to me that I should have thought about the man's height before I started throwing around ideas. We were definitely going to fly back to the States in the company jet, since Alex was flying to London in it the next day. Now we were at the castle where Jim and I shared a lot of firsts. Addie loved the place more than I believed a child her age would. We explored the halls, played silly haunted castle games, Jim being the ghost and hiding all over to scare us. It was 4 days of picnics, walks, and us 3 being a family. The day had finally come when Jim had the stablemen arrive at the house, and his horses were brought up to his massive barn, a mansion for horses. I noted 7 horses were saddled, and I laughed when I looked at Jim carrying Addie down in the adorable riding outfit we bought for her in London. "You get to pick out the one you want to ride," Jim said. "Wait," I gripped his arm. "You promised you were riding with her, and she was sitting in front of you." "I did, Mom," he answered. "I'm just letting her pick her favorite." "We'll be lucky if I can remember how to ride from my teenage years," I said, feeling a bit nervous. "Lose that attitude," Jim laughed. "Those horses are the most well-trained, best-behaved animals around. However, they'll feed off any fear you have, and you'll regret it later." "You're right." It took us a while, but we were now on our way. We rode at a slow pace through the massive amount of acreage at this place, and I basked in the contentment I felt, enjoying this peaceful ride through such beautiful terrain. I felt like we were the only 3 people in all of England. Once Jim saw that I was comfortable on my horse, we picked up our pace. As we trotted through the lush fields, I glanced over at Jim and Addie, and the sight alone made my heart smile with joy at the way they rode his horse together. Jim rode like a true equestrian, all while Addie beamed with pride as she sat safely in front of him. We rode for about an hour when I noticed that we'd circled back to where Jim and I had sat under a walnut tree, overlooking the hills that rolled on forever the first time we were here together. He dismounted, helped Addie down, and then I felt his hands on my hips as he guided me off my horse. "You see," Jim started, taking Addie's hand while I held on to his arm. "Your mom once wished we had time-traveling binoculars." He smirked at me and pointed toward the vast hills of England's stunning countryside.
"But why?"
Addie asked him.
"That's silly."
"Some might think so, but I thought it was a fantastic idea," Jim said, while he led us to the tree, and I smiled at the memory. "You see, your mother wished she could see back in time so she could witness the history of this beautiful land."
"The history?"
Addie's face scrunched up in question.
Why, though?
Because Mommy loves the history of England, I said in an excited voice. There's so many things that could have happened out there. With my time-traveling glasses, I could have seen when kings and queens rode horses like we did today. Wouldn't something like that be pretty cool?
That would be,
she said with a look that made it clear she was humoring me. But that's not all, Jim added. If you could put on those glasses, you could see your mom sitting next to me at this tree. It's where I realized she was the most delightful woman I'd ever met. Jim said with a smile. I wished I could marry her then and there. I looked at Jim in confusion. This was a beautiful side of the story I never got. Jim looked at me. We were both chasing ghosts back then, in our own ways, of course. So asking you to marry me then, well, that just wasn't the right time. He walked over to me and took my hand in his. But being here now is different. I had to sort out so many things to be able to appreciate the woman who had stolen my heart in a way no other woman could. He said, perhaps we had to go through the fire in order to purify our love for each other. I grinned. That's one way of putting it. Jim's solemn expression didn't waver. Avery Gilbert, you have fascinated me from the first moment I laid eyes on you, and you have changed my life in ways I didn't know possible. I love you so deeply, and even more so than the first moment that I knew I wanted you in my life forever. I reached for my throat, almost about to choke on the lump that was suddenly there. Was he really doing this? You bring me peace that I can't explain. You breathed life into me from the moment you sat next to me on that plane. You've given me everything and asked for nothing except for my love, he said. Before you, I was on autopilot, going through the motions of life but never truly living it. I can't go another day without you understanding that you and Addie are the best part of my life, the part of my life that was missing. I humbly ask you to trust me and know that I will always love and protect you, and I promise to devote my life wholly to you and Addie above all things. Will you please bestow upon me the highest honor I'll ever achieve by becoming my wife? Oh, God, I said, tears pulling in my eyes. Oh, my God. He pulled out a blue box and opened it. If you'll have me, then I hope you'll enjoy this ring, one that I believe a king from long ago would have given the queen he loved so dearly. Without sending her to that tower, of course. I laughed, cried, and then hugged him so tightly that I couldn't speak. I think we both served our time in that tower when we were apart for far too long, he said, as I felt him laugh, and then I pulled back to lose myself in his shimmering eyes. Yes, of course, yes, I said as Jim brushed the tears from my cheeks. But are you sure? Marriage might make... What? Might make me the happiest and most complete man on the planet? Jim said, and then silenced me with a small kiss. I love you, Avery. There's no doubt in my mind. I watched as Jim turned and knelt, as he had the first time he'd met Addie, bringing himself to her level. Addie was smiling, but I could tell she was confused. You are my best girl, and the one I have the most fun with. He brushed his finger over her nose. I can't marry your mom unless I ask something pretty big of you as well.
How big?
Addie said. Huge. His eyes widened as he dramatized his answer. Remember that one morning when you and I made green eggs and ham?
Yes.
She crinkled up her nose and laughed. He took her hands in his. Do you remember what you told me you wished for me to be for you that morning? Her lips twisted in thought, and my ugly cry was in full effect. Was Jim asking Addie for her approval too?
For you to be my real daddy, she said. When I say my prayers at night, I always ask for it to come true one day. Do you think it can?
I think it can, Jim smiled. In fact, that was the huge question I was going to ask. I wanted to know if you would still like me to be your daddy. Addie's reaction was priceless as she hugged Jim, and then I heard her crying. I walked over to where Jim had swallowed her up in his arms. Addison, I said, rubbing her back. She looked at me through teary eyes and smiled, my own tears streaming down my face as I wiped hers away. "These are happy tears, yes?" I asked her.
"Jim loves us both so much," she informed me, hugging me tightly. "We can finally be a real family now. He asked, and we have to say yes, Mommy. He's the best daddy ever."
"He certainly is," I said to her, then looked at Jim, and he smiled brilliantly. "I have something special for you too, Addie," he said, pulling out another blue box. "It's a charm on a necklace. Its symbol means that I'll be your daddy forever. I'll always protect you, care for you, and love you more than you can ever know."
"Oh my goodness,"
she smiled at Jim.
"Can I wear it forever too?"
Jim grinned. "I truly hope you do," he said, putting the necklace on her and smiling. "Forever." I watched as Addie held the charm out that Jim had clasped around her neck. "That's the infinity symbol," I said, still kneeling next to Jim. "It means that Jim will love you longer than forever, that his love will never end." "Yes, and now you'll always know that I'll love you as my very own daughter for all of our forevers together. I'm just not sure if you said yes or not." I watched Jim's forehead crinkle in humor.
"Yes, forever, you, me, and Mommy."
She hugged him again. Thank God they all said yes. I heard Colin's voice and then turned to see the entire gang was here. The reason for the other saddled horses. "Sorry, but I figured I'd be fighting that damn horse for the rest of the night if Jim didn't get his words out." Ash was running toward me, and we collided in a tight embrace. "That was the most precious thing I've ever witnessed." She sniffed and stepped back. "I videoed the entire thing, but started crying after you said yes. Then Jake rescued the video, so forgive my sobbing sounds." She handed me the phone, so it's probably really going to suck for Jim to watch after mine and Colin's commentary. Jake laughed. "I think it'll add to the moment nicely for you, though." Ash had no other option than to hand me the phone after she lost it completely once Jimmy proposed to Addie next. Jake smiled and hugged me. "Welcome to the family, kid," he said, then went toward where Ash was embracing Addie. "You sure you want in on a binding contract with this guy?" Alex smirked at me as Jim approached, and Addie was already showing her beautiful necklace to Ash, Jake, and Colin, proudly telling them that Jim was her dad now. "The binding contract will be signed," I laughed, hugging Jim's best friend, then leaned into Jim as he brought his arm around me. "The real question is, can all of you take us?" "We accepted you both a long time ago," Jake said as he rejoined us with a wink. "Hey, Addie," he said, reaching for her. "Let's get out of here and let Mom and Dad look through their time-traveling glasses together. My horse is faster than Jim's anyway."
"Yeah, he's sorta my dad now, Jake."
Jake chuckled. "Well then, that makes me your uncle. And I expect to hear Uncle Jake come out of that mouth next time." They all rode off together, leaving Jim and me alone to soak up this treasured moment. We sat down next to the tree. "God, I love you," I said, tearing up again. I'm at a loss for words. Jim brought his arm around me as we reclined against the tree. "So I planned that we'd take off for that little hotel we stayed at before. Then after a night alone, perhaps you and Ash will start in with the wedding arrangements." "It doesn't need to be anything fancy," I laughed. "Fantastic." He kissed my temple. "Then when we're back in the States, we'll head to the first courthouse we see. The next monumental question I want you to consider heavily is solely up to you and what you believe is best for Addie." "What is it? My mind is still stuck on your amazing proposal." "Well, I was thinking," he said. "You know how you got full custody of Addie after Derek got locked up again? Kinda hard to forget when your kid's dad flunks out of rehab for the third time and then goes on a crime spree before getting sent to prison for the foreseeable future, don't you think?" I said with a half laugh. I wished I could say things were going differently for Derek, and he was now the father he should have been, but the truth was that he was better off in prison, and that was precisely where he'd landed himself. "I think we all saw it coming from day one with that guy," he said. "That's sort of what has me thinking. With me being surrounded by lawyers daily, I tend to overthink things sometimes, and I worry about things. What happens to Addie if something were to happen to you?" Jesus, I thought, almost in a panic. I'd never thought of anything like that before. Well, I say all this because I want you to know that I would gladly adopt Addison after we're married. I shot up and looked at Jim as if he were high or something. That is asking a lot of you. I mean, a lot. Truthfully, I'd want it no other way. It doesn't change the way I love her or plan to care for her for the rest of her life, though. But it's asking you to trust me as her legal parent. Maybe it's a heavy thing to consider. I just want you to know that I'm all in, 1,000%. You're the best thing to ever happen to both of us, I answered, turning to face him. I trust that we will be together forever. He pulled me into his arms. Then it's all settled. He kissed my nose. You will soon be Mrs. Avery Mitchell, and our little wild child will be known to all as Addison Mitchell. Has a damn good ring to it, doesn't it? I straddled him. What do you say we get these horses back to the house, say goodbye for the night, get in that car and blast up to that castle? Jim arched his eyebrow at me. I think I should drive this time. That's the thing about marriage, darling. I used the term we used when we were fake married on our last trip. What's yours is mine now. Jim chuckled and nipped at my lips. Are you sure you want that pain-in-the-ass company? That's the downside of this marriage, you know. I get a sweet little girl as my daughter, and my gift to you is that damn company. He laughed. Still want everything that's mine? I want the good times, the hard times, and the until death do us part times. I want you, and that's all that matters. God, I love you. More than words, gorgeous, he said. I'm inclined to fulfill a wedding night wish out, here and right now. Anybody around? If they were, he smirked as we lay back on the grass. I think we'd scare them off. Then hurry up and kiss me. I laughed, and that's when Jem and I took advantage of the gang taking off, so we could celebrate this event alone. I would never allow myself to forget this moment, this day that would change our lives forever. The way Jem's face was lit up with happiness the entire time. Dreams couldn't get better than what I had with this man. My life was fulfilled before this unexpected proposal to my daughter and me. Who would have imagined that after everything I'd been through in my crazy life, I'd be so utterly blessed to have this man as my husband, and more importantly, the new real father to my daughter. My life was abundantly full. Did I deserve it? Before I got help, I would have said no. But now that I was healthy in my heart and mind, my answer was yes. I deserved this happiness. My daughter deserved this family. And we were just getting started. This concludes Mr. Mitchell by Raylin Marks. Narrated by Sarah Puckett and Aidan Snow. Copyright 2020 by Raylin Marks. This unabridged audiobook is published by arrangement with Raylin Marks and was produced in the year 2021 by Tantor Media Incorporated, a division of Recorded Books, which holds the copyright thereto. Please visit tantor.com for more information on our growing library of unabridged audiobooks.